Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, August the 10th, 2016 City Council meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Shelley, will you do roll call for us?
I can. Albertson. Here. Bueller. Here. Danforth.
Here.
Manti. Here. Riefenberger.
Here.
Roby.
Here.
Solom.
Here.
Thorson.
Here.
Tupper.
Here.
Vilhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Welcome, and at this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for approval of the agenda. Motion by John, second by Glenn. Any questions, changes? Hearing none, I'll look for all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, number 2, presentation, review, and public input on the mayor's proposed 2016 city budget. We're going to start off with the new guy on the block. Justin, welcome, and then I'll turn this over to Shelley, and she can handle it.
He's all smiling.
Yeah. It is, and in Justin's defense, he was lucky enough to start when we had just about kind of finalized the budget. So the mayor and I kind of worked on it. We brought Justin in to review it and to see if there was anything that he wanted, anything different, and I'll let him kind of tell you what he requested and why. And then if you guys have any questions specifically for him, be kind, because he's kind of walking into this. So give him a year to really know what his needs are as a city attorney. And then he can come back next year locked and loaded for you. So Justin, if you just kind of want to tell him what you know about your 2017 proposed budget, and then we'll go from there.
I sure appreciate that, Shelley. Thank you for teeing me up and yeah, with all those caveats. Yeah, no. Looking at this, the budget process, it really, obviously, the city attorney has a small shop. The work that I do is predominantly technical, and so the resources that I'm requesting, the real substantial change besides personal services. I'm a newer attorney, and so garner less in salary. But in addition to the minor budget changes that I've requested, I did ask for a resource material increase of $5,000. That resource is for Westlaw, an online legal database that allows me to essentially research what for decades was provided in print materials, now in an electronic format. And the benefit of that to the city is that the research is done a lot faster. The research is more comprehensive because much like going online, going on Google, typing in, various keywords, you get to that information maybe a lot better than you would in a catalog or in the Yellow Book or what have you. So that's the same thought. I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't think it was a very important resource to have, something that the city, I think, would benefit from tremendously. The cost of the service is $500 per month, and currently the term is for 12 months. So I've taken what resource budget is allotted for this year and factored that in, and am asking for $5,000. That amount also includes other text resources that I've asked to not renew on account of the electronic resource taking care of that. So
Definitely got to make your office way more efficient with the electronic side of it compared to paging through book to book. And
If I may, Justin, I just want mentioned to the council, it's just been a great addition to the office over there. I know that most of you have had an opportunity to ask Justin for things, but the department heads are asking for help. And it's coming back extremely fast and is very accurate, and it's just been very, very good for us. So I think this Westlaw, I think it was mentioned during our interview process, you asked if we had it. I thought we did. We didn't. You do now. And I think it's very good.
Just a comment, our office went down this road with accounting and tax research materials a number of years ago. Boy, I tell you what, it is money well spent.
You guys have any other questions for Justin or the attorney budget?
Shelley, I'm assuming the miscellaneous revenue, that's the utilities portion that's reimbursed back to the city?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, which equals 25% of the expenditure budget. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Justin. I appreciate you coming. Have a good rest of your evening. No, you're stuck here with me. The next one is information technology. Spencer, before he begins, I'm just going to let you guys know of a change that's going to be made. I left the book as is so you can, because you're familiar with how it looks. For the final budget, any technology line items that are in other departments right now is going to be transferred into IT, and there's just going to be basically one line item, computer software for whatever department enlisted in there. Any departments outside of the general fund will just kind of set up a transfer system so that the general fund isn't funding all of the technology for the city, but other funds are paying it back. This gives Spencer a little more control over those budgets. He can determine when he's gonna he can order a whole entire shipment of computers and get them set up and get them delivered. He can make sure that they're uniform, that all the software is uniform, and it's just kind of one more step in the whole process of getting the city all on the same page. If we ever want to get to that point where we're all networked, he's got something to work with. Right now it's kind of a hodgepodge and each department has done their own thing. So it's just, we're slowly stepping into that. So the final budget ordinance will look just a little bit different, but we're not changing the totals. It's just we're kind of moving some things into the IT. So that being said, if you want to talk about your IT budget as it sits right now.
Right on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? We have had a very busy start of the year. Our accomplishments, we've formed the IT department. We're kind of gelling as a group. It's kind of exciting seeing that happen. We got 3 different people all sitting together, and now we're kind of forming a team. And it's really, I think it can show in our numbers that we're cranking out a lot of stuff, and I think we're really making some good headway. So. One of the big ones that one of the big items that we got taken care of right away is we're implementing an IT ticketing solution, and I say implementing because I don't know when it's fully going to be implemented. We're using it currently, but we're not requesting department heads put in their own tickets at the current moment. We're just manually entering them ourselves and keeping track of things on our side. But it's got a lot of functionality, and it also is our asset tracking. So we're keeping track of every IT asset in the city, so we know where it is. And we got that for a very reasonable price. I don't need to read the whole thing, but we did update all of the computers off XP, which was another big undertaking. I think we had 30. Support ended for XP in 2014, so we really needed to get those knocked out. A lot of surplus this year, cleaned up a lot of stuff. Pretty happy with that process. We got a whole nother basement load though, so we might be coming back and asking to get rid of some of the junk.
If you could just touch on that, because I know you guys spent a lot of hours trying to clean them up, work them out, and then get them sold on the auction.
Yeah, it was a little bit sad, really. We spent quite a few man hours getting, we don't want to leave money on the tables. We spent some man hours getting things kind of tidied up and all these assets moved and whatnot. Got the computers wiped so that we could get them on surplus. I think, not counting our car, we made $200 and 170 was probably two laptops. We had done several computers. A lot of them went unsold, and we pretty much just went and junked them afterwards. So, I guess lesson learned that if they were not worth a whole lot at that point. They're old, and everyone else thought the same thing. So I think we'll still look at laptops. They seem to sell a little bit more. We might do some more with that. But the desktop age is kind of over. No one's going to buy an old desktop on a surplus auction.
I'm assuming that as we're scrapping or surplusing on, that they're all scrubbed and cleaned up, I mean, as far as any data on them.
Actually, what we do, it's my understanding is we haven't actually done it yet, but it's my understanding the PD goes out to the landfill and crushes a whole bunch of stuff. So we pull all the hard drives out of the devices, and then we will crush them. So as far as the things that were surplused, we wiped them completely out and reloaded the operating system. That's why it takes time. When you surplus something, is the man hours worth what you sold it for? And it's not. At least in the case of last year.
Did you took advantage of the free upgrades then on Windows 10 or?
We didn't. There's a lot of management tools that aren't quite there yet. We don't have. For instance, there's like an app store now, and there's no way of managing that app store. So we're standardizing on Windows 7 for a while. A few computers got upgraded and then re-downgraded. If we see a Windows 10 computer, we downgrade it back to Windows 7 because we want to be standardized for now, so it's consistent.
I do have one question. You give out laptops to all the people in the council. Do we give laptops to, like, the Board of Adjustments people? We don't give. No, they don't. So the only ones are us. Because my thought was, I don't even use it, and I never took one. You ought to just have a pad or something, just a pad with access, and because I don't use the computer at all.
A pad like Notepad or a tablet. Okay. Yeah, I think that there might be in future budget 2018 some money set aside for replacement of the laptops or something similar, whether that be a tablet or a screen. And we've heard several. We've heard another thing we're talking about doing to get us through this next year is having Pete go around and image every one of your computers just to give it a fresh start, and hopefully it'll run a little better and connect to the Wi-Fi all the time. So, so we're aware of it. And so moving on to, I should just note that on the imaging side, we really have a process down, which was a huge undertaking. Part of the ticketing, we're trying to build a process, and how do we get a computer out of a box into a desk and set up for that person? We've got a full process. It's about a 4-sheet checklist that people go through, just, especially Ray and Pete, who do a majority of the installs, go through and make sure that they're not missing something, so that we're providing a consistent service. So our goals for 2017 is the big ones, probably the community center. We got a lot of items going on there, as you can imagine, everything from security systems to computers to wireless, internet, phones, a lot of stuff going on there. But also we have a website refresh. We pay maintenance on a website, a pretty substantial amount, $6,000-7,000 every year. But what's nice about that is every 4 years they give us a hardware or a website refresh, which gives us a new look. And this, I think, is going to be a relatively big one because they're changing the back end. So that's one of our big items. We're going to continue to push forward, trying to get our network centralized, get some fiber lit up if possible. Look at MPLS lines from service providers and see what we can do there to really, really get more people connecting to City Hall instead of buying a server here, buying a server there. How do we get that stuff centralized? How can we get a better backup solution? So those are all things we'll be working on 2017 and really beyond. We can't. I wish I could do it all in 2017, but it might take a little bit of time.
Spencer, can I jump in for
Yeah,
a quick
absolutely.
second? You know, you've got on here the update GovTV and new look and content. I noticed that the last time I looked at it, last couple of times, the sound was way off sync with the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the video wasn't. I mean, hasn't, in my opinion, has not been all that great either.
Yeah.
Are there plans to kind of make sure we make that look a little better, sound better?
Yeah, you know, I got a GovTV budget, moved over from the mayor's budget, and it's kind of right in tune with the website stuff. To be quite honest, is our content kind of stinks a lot of times. Not necessarily the council meetings. No, but we don't have a lot of content. A lot of we call them filler slides. We don't have a lot of content, so it's a little dry. We're really going to work on that. I kind of talked to the mayor about that, and we're going to reach out to, I don't know, the different people, the schools, the CVB chamber. We're going to try to get some content, make it a little more peppy. And luckily, we got Pete on our side. He came from a web development background, so he's going to be a good fit for that task. We got a new box, but we basically just kind of got it up there because we were worried that the old one was going to die. So we're heading the right direction there. We're also looking at doing a live stream online and also having our GovTV 24/7 online. So you might be seeing some stuff like that also.
You can get these guys in their hot yoga thing going. Inside joke, Spencer. You don't want to know, dude. Just keep going. Keep going.
That mean we can take a commercial break?
Bill, you can't get it out of your mind, can you?
You really can't. We just lost our 2 viewers. All right. Anyway.
Spencer, while you're looking at that, and as we've looked through a lot of the budgets so far, we have aggregately amongst all of us, we have a lot of money that we pay for our phone. Is that a lot of that our charges to whoever our main provider is? Is that where a lot of that cost goes?
Are you talking cell phones?
Well, it's just it'll say, if I go through every budget, it's phone, and we spend a lot of money
Yeah.
aggregately amongst all the departments and such.
It's a number of things. I know my phone budget, I kind of get away cheap. I don't pay for my phone on my desk, but I pay for the cell phone, the stipend. So it's a stipend fee. It's the cost of the phone lines. We have so many phone lines throughout the city. So it's the cost of listing, cost of those phone lines,
And I think on that point, Mike, Spencer has been working with a number of companies, 3-4 companies, just on the phones, so we can tie them all together, get a much cheaper price, different lines that are going in at no cost. Some are offering lines that are at a zero cost for him. He's working very diligently.
That's what I was wondering, if we have any kind of plan to look to consolidate and rejuvenate that, so to speak, and with some of the other technologies and offerings that are out there to lower our costs overall, standardize
Yeah,
as well.
and another thing is my goal on the phone system is to get us where we have one phone system and where we can see presence and like who's on the phone. If I want to call Shane, as it will pop up on the computer and say Shane's busy, so I know not even to call, because it'll pop up. Not a huge deal, but I would really like us to have a single phone system through multiple departments to kind of link us together, really get that centralized feel of the city of Watertown, not this department, this department, this department. So that's kind of a big picture thing, but we're definitely doing a lot of research on that, and I think there'll be more to come with that. You'll hear more.
Could some of that maybe go away if we do the internet phone?
That's what I was wondering if you could do
The
internet.
cloud-based. Yeah,
Well, I mean, voice over the internet or whatever, then you don't actually have to use the landlines for that, and then you can be
Correct.
kind
And
of
what's good
interconnected
about,
that way.
One of the thing that I was forgetting, the extra part of the bill that we get on our phones is long distance.
Well, yeah,
Gosh, I
you-
couldn't say it. Yeah, long distance. So with an IP phone system, a lot of times those long distance fees just disappear. So we're doing a lot of, we're on premise versus cloud. We're doing a lot of work.
Well, I know businesses that are in multiple locations basically can pick up their phone and almost like intercom, and they're not even in the same state.
That's
And
what-
so, I mean, it seems like there's got to be a way to maybe coordinate some things like that.
That's a huge advantage of a hosted option for a city of 18 different locations we have inside the city, and we aren't all connected. So
And that's what you're looking at doing with the internet also, just having one server. So it's like a intranet, and then they come all through us, and we just have one firewall and head out that way.
correct. It's got its own sets of challenges, bandwidth. So we want to make sure that before we do it, I'm not going to make a lot of people mad by slowing everyone down or something. So, yeah, definitely. That's the goal. Let's get things centralized and save money on servers, save money on that internet bill, and save money on our phones. And really, the thing we never talk about is production. Let's get more productive with this. That's IT's job. We don't have that revenue on my budget, so we gotta make other people more productive. That's what we're here for.
I was thinking, Bill, with Bruce and Randy, maybe they could have like a weather channel. They could be like the guys on GovTV.
We could set up like a little
That's what I'm-
studio,
That's what I'm thinking, a little
Like green
studio.
screen?
Yeah, yeah.
but with the basement.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah. Thanks, Spence. You guys got any more questions for Spencer? Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
no
gonna-
kidding, let's move on.
I appreciate it, Spence, and the work that you're doing with all these other departments has really helped out dramatically, and
Well,
we
Mayor,
appreciate it.
I'd just like to say to you and to Spencer and to Shelley that it's refreshing to see us moving in a direction of looking at efficiency. We haven't done that for a long time in a lot of ways in the organization, and this area of the computers and the phone systems, but computers for standardization and centralization will pay us a lot of good benefits in the future. A lot of other areas in the city that we'll be able to do things with, same concept, and I know we'll move there, but I commend you guys for doing that. It's the right way to go, so.
Yeah, as far as the only other thing I'll add is on the 5-year plan, I hope I got a good, I think I have a pretty good idea of what we're going for, but I'm worried that I didn't jump in full knowing exactly what we're going to need in 5 years, so expect that to maybe be tweaked a little.
Yeah, and we would expect that,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks, Spence.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Next one is the Upper Big Sioux Watershed Project. Roger, here's your 5 minutes of fame, so go ahead and talk about your budget and any changes for the 2017 year.
One thing you've probably noticed is that our budget is down a little bit for this year. That's basically due to the grant funds that we've received are less than what we've received in the past. I think we've got a solid plan on how to deal with those issues over the next couple of years, and we'll definitely be going back to the state and the EPA for additional funding in the future. Other than that, it's kind of the same budget we've seen year in and year out, the same type of projects. No, same bat time, same bat station. I love
Did
that
you ever
show.
get that big green truck?
You know, we had to put the big green truck off for a few years.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you got that big green truck or not. You were sitting right there last year with pictures up there, were you not?
Yes, yes, and unfortunately, the project itself comes before the big fun truck.
You know, we have a big agenda here tonight, but I would like you to touch base on two quick things. I know you took a trip through the river yesterday or the day before on your kayaks, and I'd like you to just touch a little bit on the river going through town, and then the weir, and then Lake Compesca's Clarity, if you could, and just shorten it into like a minute and a half.
All right, we'll do the best. We went through the river last night. We got really muddy. Actually, the river is not in too bad a shape. The channel is very open. Some of the trees from, say, the Elks Lodge south to 212, there are 4 or 5 trees that are hanging over the water, in the water. They're not impeding the flow directly across the channel, but it's something to think about removing. The worst area was behind the zoo between 10th and 3rd. Lots of trees and stuff in there. The guys in the canoe had a hard time getting through that. I'm still washing mud out of the canoe. You push and pull and you push and you paddle. My recommendation, perhaps we can put together a plan in the winter to go in with an excavator, long arm, reach across the river, cut some of them trees out, yank them out, and pull them across for access. It's real difficult to access the riverbank on both sides there. But other than the trees, a hot water heater, some bicycles, a couple of tires, it's not in too bad a shape. The river bottom itself is very, very silty. That rich, black, smelly, wonderful stuff. There's not much we can really do about that to get rid of it except pray for rain, and unfortunately it'll become someone else's problem. Okay, that was the river. What else did you want?
Yeah, the weir and Clarity.
The word I heard on the weir is that it is being, I don't know if it's being bidded out yet or it's been discussed, that there is a possible solution of using a steel wall to extend the existing weir over to higher ground. I don't have all the details on that yet, but it sounds like a plan is in motion, and we're going to get someplace with that fairly soon.
Yeah, it is. Okay. And then the Clarity of the lake.
The clarity of the lake is really great right now. I wish I could take credit for it. Yes, the project has made an impact on the waters, but what I've been telling people, the real reason for that clear of water is that we haven't really had a lot of runoff over the last 3 years. 3 years ago, water came over the pollution control weir for about 3 days, maybe 4 days, about 6-8 inches deep. Last year, it came over for 8 hours, 2 inches deep. This year, it didn't come over at all. So we've really have cut back on the nitrates that have entered Lake Compesca. And without nitrates, we're pretty much starving the vegetation that's in there. Algae can't grow because they need that food, and then the water, of course, becomes more clear.
So one last question from me. If the weir would have been in there in place, would there have been more water into the lake this spring?
That's tough to tell because it never really reached the ordinary high water mark is where the pollution control weir is set. Maybe, maybe not.
Okay.
And if so, not a whole lot.
All right.
What's the plans to try to keep that weir, once we get it fixed, maintained, so we don't have the...
Roger probably heard me on the radio today. I think I said that he will be looking at it every once in a while.
Apparently, I'll be inspecting that annually.
He's the inspector. Inspector Caluso. we call
There you
him.
go. Well, he's gotta have that big green truck to get out there, though.
You bet. And I have kayaks and canoes. It's no big deal. The steel wall structures tend to be more stable than some of the other ones. And of course, if you guys ever look at the aerial photographs of that area, Mother Nature has her own mind. You know, look at all the different channels, how things cut. The plan so far, I believe, is good enough to hold back the river for a while, but if we get a huge event and it decides to cut another channel some other way, you know, how can we plan for that? It's all very flat and very open back in there.
Mayor, who is on that project? Who is it that's responsible for getting a final design, getting things done? Is that you and our engineering staff? Is there, who is the owner of it right now?
Actually, Shane and myself have taken that on. We're working with, is it HR Green or HDR? HDR.
We were using the HDR report that was done in about 2005-ish time. And so we're using their report to prepare our plans to find the remedy, and that's the direction we're going in. Right now, we're getting the permitting.
And in fact, the permit has been filed already, or our paperwork for the permit has been filed. There's been questions come back that they need to fill out and get response back to the Corps of Engineers. So we're just looking to see if there's any way to speed the process on that, because right now it's looking like October, November, possibly even as late as early December, and we would hope that it wouldn't go that far out.
Is that steel wall, is that an option? Is that, I mean, it must be a lot cheaper than doing a lot of...
I haven't seen the cost analysis between a steel wall and a clay core small dam type of thing. But I think what they're looking at is the footprint of the steel wall is smaller so that we do less damage and have to mitigate less of the wetland disturbance back there. And that would be a huge deal.
Speaking of wetland disturbance, a couple of us, I had the opportunity, was it last year, to go on a tour of the Upper Big Sioux watershed. Is that something you're planning on doing again? I guess if somebody hasn't done that, I would really encourage them to do that. It's really nice to see some best practices and some worst practices and what you've all done. You know, because you've said this is a one farm at a time or one property at a time project. So it's nice to see what people have done up there. So I didn't know if you were planning that.
Yes, we'll probably do that in the spring.
I just want to mention too, Gene Day called me today. Gene Day had an excavating company for many, many years and did a lot of seawall stuff. And he said he had a pretty good idea of how to take care of that too. So it wouldn't hurt just to talk to him, visit with him a little bit. Some of the systems that he used to put in place, he feels would work really well and be fairly economical for us to use. So I would urge you, Shane, to at least have a conversation with Gene and see what kind of ideas he can offer.
We can certainly do that.
Any other questions you guys have? Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you for your
Appreciate
time.
you coming. Okay, we'll move on to engineering department. And Shane, if you want to just... All right. Get on the hot seat. And if you want to go through any changes in your budget or anything that you've got planned for next year.
It's not fair if I don't have to sit up here with everybody else having to, so. Really, not to sound like we're boring and not doing anything, but there really isn't much that needs to change in the engineering budget. And so essentially our budget is gonna reflect the same budget that we put in for last year. We'll continue to monitor certain aspects of that. About the only thing that really changes year to year possibly in our budget is education and training type of opportunities. But right now I think we're in pretty good shape on that front. And so looking forward, some of the things that we will be working towards and for the city is we in currently wrapping up our pavement management study, and hopefully we'll get the results of that and start to digest that and build our street maintenance and replacement program. based on that information that we're collecting. And that'll be a real game changer potentially for how we approach our future projects, whether we're going to do a lot more maintenance or if we're going to do some reconstruction work, et cetera, like that. We try to coordinate our projects with the municipal utilities as much as we can. For instance, this year's alley project, again, was a coordination between the utility company and our engineering staff to get an upgrade downtown, and we'll continue to do those efforts as well as on other street projects where they may need to do some water main work. We'll coordinate our street projects accordingly, and we also embrace the wastewater department with that same regard. So, in fact, one of the main things that we did differently this year with regard to our sanitary sewer project was we actually enhanced that to where instead of just cutting a trench down the middle of the road, this year in some cases, we're actually milling and overlaying so the whole road's going to look new from curb to curb from end of that project to the end of that project, rather than just have patches randomly all the way through our street system. And what that does for us is it kind of gets the pavement system all on the same maintenance schedule, so that when you do your next crack sealing or your next chip seal, it's full blocks, curb to curb, instead of just pieces of the street here and there that are different ages. So those are the kinds of things that we try to hopefully, that's the only way that engineering tries to get more efficient, is by piggybacking all that work that impacts the streets together. So we'll continue to do that. We will again have an ADA sidewalk program next year. We won't get out through our program yet for at least another year, but we'll continue to strive to get that better. Every year we'll look at our ordinances and our permitting process and try to see if we can find ways to make it better or improve it. Things that aren't working, we'll try to make it a little more smooth. So one of the other goals, well, I guess that's for the next topic for water resources, but we'll continue to work on planning and zoning procedures as well. So with that, I don't have any real budget changers, but questions?
I would like to just throw out there, if I can, to you guys, one of the things that we've tried to do, the council, 3 years ago, when a lot of us came on, is that to get the street department and the engineering department and the utility department and all of the communications in Watertown to all kind of work together, so when we go into a street, we know who's going to have to be there, or if the utilities needs to get into a street, you need to get in there for storm sewer or what have you, sanitary. And I will tell you guys that has worked out extremely well. Before they go into any kind of a project, there's always the meetings that they're holding. Like now this fall, they'll be very closely working together and deciding which roads they're going to be going into and who's going into it and for what reason. Yeah, it's working really well. Thanks, Shane.
No, it's got to save all departments a lot of money. I mean, the whole city in a whole, I mean,
Plus
utilities and everything.
Plus it saves our roads.
Well, yeah.
Brand new cut and a brand new road.
Yeah, but when we go out and do
Frustrating than that.
go in and put in a brand new road and have, no blame to anybody, but have the utilities come in a year later and dig it up, put something else in there. I mean, working together as a whole has got to be, in every department's got to be huge savings, so.
I appreciate those comments, and just for a disclaimer, we'll never get that quite perfect. There's always that thing that breaks that you don't anticipate that you'll have to dig a hole for, but we'll try to minimize it.
It's not going to be perfect, but I tell you what, in the last 3 years, we've seen a huge decrease in that, one digging it up right after the other one fixes it, so we appreciate all your hard work that all those departments have put together, so.
I see some guys working on the curb corners for the ADA stuff. We usually have about 100,000 annually that we put in for that.
Yeah, this year we did a little bit larger project because we didn't do anything
Last
at all
last year, yeah.
But we did make some good strides towards that, and again, we'll do the same size project next year.
I just had a thought today, and it's maybe stupid, but I don't know how we decide where. I know some of it's supposed to be involved if the streets are getting fixed or repaired, supposed to be done then, but, you know, it just came to me and said, well, we're putting it in over here, but is there a way that we can find out where there's, you know, if there actually are some handicapped people and deal with areas that they might be more valuable than, we might be doing someplace where nobody's, you know what I'm saying? I don't know how you coordinate that, but.
I do. We have an inventory of what ADA, there's multiple ADA issues. We're trying to take care of the radiuses and the ramps, so that's primarily intersection work. And we're concentrating on the areas that are around schools, the hospital, and, you know, those areas where we expect a lot of foot traffic around city parks. That's our primary goal. And then eventually there'll be a bigger goal. You know, downtown area may need some significant upgrades to the intersections. And what makes it tough in those locations is because there's so many other utilities. Every street intersection has electric handholds for lighting. It has handholds for telecommunications, and lots of stuff in the way. And until we do a wholesale large project, those are big projects. And frankly, we're not ready to take on that until we do a larger project improvement. And we'll always look for our ADA compliance issues on any project we go into. Whether it's even a street that's only 5 years old, if we got to do something in an area, we'll go after something that's not compliant. It's part of the federal program that kind of pushes us towards that. So,
And I know it's hard for Shane not to remember everything to talk about, you know, that's going on. But when you put in new roads now in places where we have higher water, you've made changes that we're going to put in the drain tile into, you know, certain areas, things like that. I did want to have you touch on 19th Street. We still have those little holes out there.
Yep.
Kind of where we're at on that.
Okay, so we evaluated those utility holes this spring, and we decided that hadn't completely settled out yet. So we decided to wait one more year and watch it. The street department is going to throw some fresh patches in there to kind of smooth up the bumps a little bit, but they're always going to be a bump until we do something more aggressive. And next spring, we're scheduling to do a mill and overlay just in a path over those holes to kind of smooth that back up. It is going to look like a patch, and it always will look like a patch until it gets seal coated, but the goal is to make that function better and not be like a cobblestone street right through there, so.
Yeah, the utilities hasn't even found the leak yet out there, have they?
No, but I believe they've given up on that. I don't think
I
they're
think
gonna-
last I heard it was so minimal.
The leak was a can of Coke a day,
Yeah.
a little less. I mean,
So, yeah, I believe they're not gonna pursue that anymore, and we'll fix the road next
Right.
spring.
Right.
Does anybody else have any questions for the street department budget? Otherwise, we'll move on to water resources. Shane, if you just want to give a little recap of that.
Sure. And again, we're not asking for any substantial changes for 2017 from the 2016 budget. Our goals, one of my big things since I've gotten here is we've been evaluating our storm sewer infrastructure and those needs, and one of the ways to maybe potentially fund that is we're looking at different funding mechanisms. Possibly one idea is to do a stormwater utility, and we haven't finalized anything by any means, but we're gathering information to find out how that would be implemented, if that's what we choose to do, or if it's even feasible for this community to do it. I will say that essentially all of the other communities that are in the MS4 program, as we are in Watertown, have a stormwater utility. And what they do is they cover stormwater-related topics with that funds. And we don't have that, so we're a little bit lacking in our ability to take on some bigger projects because of that. And so we're going to continue to look at that. You'll see more information come from my department very soon on that. So that's a big goal for 17. 17 happens to have, we don't have a big budget, so we try to take on as many small projects as we can. One project that we've got is a washout on the Marina Bay Drive that we're going to try to take on next year, and see if we can get that fixed. And if not, we'll try to take on something else. But the project that didn't get completed in 2016 is the Eastwoods Drainage Improvements Project, and that's headed in a slightly different direction right now as far as how we're approaching the resolution of that issue. So you'll see more information come for that one as well. So,
Shane, question, I don't know where we're at in the whole scheme of things, but we had a 2-year stint trying to figure out what we're gonna end up doing with Stony Point out there, right? And the bantering back and forth and such, but during that process, and we've all been a part of that, but there were a lot of concerns expressed about our current ordinances and what they allow, and how that, when this came up, we had to work the current ordinances. Are we going to be looking at our ordinances as the relates to that type of topic and development around the lake, and how that may need to be different than in city proper, for lack of better terms? I know there was a lot of discussion on that something needed to get done because it is different around the lake. Do we feel there are some things there that need to be changed, and will we be looking at those?
we are going to look at that. I don't know that, one of the big goals is not necessarily to differentiate between in town and out at the lake per se, but we do have to include both types of topics in our discussion and review of our ordinances. And I am planning to work with our consultant at SEH on that review and come forward with some proposed changes on how we handle that in the future. So, yes, but I don't know how well we'll be able to differentiate topics at the lake with the rest of the community. We will, however, look at that to see if it can be done equitably.
Does there need to be two different things instead of merged into one, where we're looking at flood control as one issue and then water quality is a different issue? That's kind of what all came up. It first started out as flood, and then it got to be water quality, but, as opposed to what might be going on up in this end of town, which was more of a flood control issue than it was so much a water quality, and then it became a completely different issue at the lake.
They are slightly different topics, but they're addressed in almost a very similar way. With water retention or detention and treatment. So they kind of go hand in hand, but they just reach a different level of storm activity. I know that's hard to follow, but water quality happens on every little storm, where when you get the big storm, sometimes you still get some water quality treatment, but not as much as you might have on a smaller storm. So they go hand in hand, but they're not apples to apples.
Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Shane. We will move on to the Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund. I handed out a sheet. There were some changes made. 1 second.
Do you have an extra one for me?
Yes.
Okay, so the first page is I just wrote up a little narrative just so you didn't have to look through every single number of the new pages that you have, what is different from the ones that you have in your book. So I think, and because some of the department heads aren't here, we're just going to go kind of right down the line. We'll start with public safety. We'll go into the street, storm, rec part of it. And then if you have any questions, the mayor and I will try our best to answer for the departments that aren't here. And then you can see the changes that were made from what you're looking at in your book right now. So going through on the public safety improvements, you can look and see what was requested, and then the mayor's proposed budget. The training center, that they're anticipating using $20,000 of second penny, 30,000 of donations, and I think that has to do with the burn tower. The tornado shelter, which everybody is aware of, that it's also a 75-25 match for federal funding. And then an ambulance every other year. And Doug talked about that a little bit last night, where they're kind of looking into maybe a refurbished model, which is less than what a new model would be. The original,
Shelley,
yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody knows, this is the one we're on. It's on the bottom page, has number 118 on that, so
Yep.
everybody's following it.
Yep, so right after the narrative. Yep. The outdoor gun range, it started as an indoor/outdoor gun range. The original request was 1.5 million, which has been carried through the long-term CIP process, as everybody is aware of that. Through discussions, and Mayor, you can chime in if I'm not getting this right, but through discussions, it was kind of determined to phase. The outdoor range is moving along faster than the indoor range. There's some, is it Pittman Robbins, federal funding that can go along with that. So it's something that they're ready to go on. They have the funds. We're moving along with that. So,
If I may.
Go ahead.
That kind of moved along extremely fast on account of the game fishing parks. Their fiscal years are different than ours, and they're ready to go on that outdoor part of it. So we're taking advantage of that situation right now for that.
Yep. So in talking to Game Fish and Parks in Pier, the indoor part was kind of taken out and moved, so you'll see that in the long-term portion. The outdoor is going to continue. They requested that we put in anywhere from 350 to 500,000 in for dirt work, and then the city's 25% match. And then, so we put in the 450,000, 75% of that will come back.
The
And-
match can also be used as far as the work that
Soft
we've
match.
done on it. It's a soft match. It can be the property. It can be numerous things that
Yep.
are already included in
LATI
that.
partnership, anything that they bring, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces to that. So when you see that that's decreased, and then you see that that's been changed from indoor/outdoor to just outdoor, with the indoor to come. Does anybody have any questions?
Shelley, looking at the sheet that we're on, 118, how do I correlate those numbers, or do they correlate to the capital improvement fund that we will be looking at? I don't know what page he's named.
So
aren't
like
paid.
the page before, that summary isn't 100% accurate, because there's a few numbers that are different, but you can see here, outdoor gun range, 450,000, ambulance, 175. So, I mean, that's just basically kind of a listing and a summary of what the detail is, if you're kind of looking at the
Oh,
word
this is
pages.
what I was looking at here.
Yep. So if you just kind of want to concentrate on the detail part of it, and then if you have any questions on the revenues, that would be the fourth page is the brand new revenue and expenditure summary.
So. Is that tornado shelter expected to be, it just seems like a lot of money for the size of building that we're talking about.
I think it's a huge amount of money, and what's happened is that the fire department, of course, is working with state funding on this. They have their own engineers that are doing it. They are actually designing it and telling us what the costs are going to be. It will go out for bids. I think it'll be substantially less, but it does have a match to that also.
Yep, it's the 75-25, and you'll see that.
But I think that
So
price
it's kind
is
of like
out
a
of whack.
road thing, we gotta spend 25-30% more
That's exactly, that's
to save
exactly
some other
correct.
money?
I would say so.
I'm not,
You
I
would
haven't
think they
seen
would
any
have enough of
plans.
those, that they would be like a cookie cutter. They could just make it bam, bam, bam.
I understand
and it's done.
structurally it has to have some design to it, but we're not talking, and you, just a shell, you know.
Did they have to add a bathroom? Is there a bathroom?
There's 2 bathrooms inside of it, yeah, there's a
So
men's and a women's
that'll
bathroom in
add
there.
cost to it as well.
Right.
I think that's when it went
One
up.
of the things that will happen is, once it's been inspected by FEMA, they turn it over to the city, and there's some things we can do with that.
Okay, if there isn't any other questions, then we'll move on to the street system improvements. You can see from the original request, there were some changes made to the mayor's proposed. And so, Mayor, if you just kind of want to go through, and between you and Shane, you can kind of go through some of the requests and the changes that you made.
Well, when we take a look at, and Shane, just jump in any time if I have it mistaken, but when you take a look at the seal coating and crack sealing, that has pretty much stayed level throughout the years. That's something that we did not do for a long time, and we're trying to catch up on all the miles that need the seal cracking, but then you get down into the street improvements. A lot of that has to do with the chip sealing. Now, according to Rob, he says we're really caught up on most of our streets for chip sealing, and we talked about it. He said I would just prefer to have those dollars lowered down then and used on other projects. So that's why you see that particular item down. So it won't be as much chip sealing next year because we really have caught up on a lot of our roads. Derby Downs, of course, budget 16. We haven't really done anything with that. Shelley, that'll carry forward. That's correct. And then you go down Uptown Alley parking lots. We're going to continue on to that project, but we haven't been spending as much as what we have been budgeting all along. We were budgeting in 2016, 285. We budgeted, the whole thing, 320 is where it ended up at 325 because Shane, you did add more into that for the project over here, just to the west of us. But actually, the request of $75,000 is what we're looking at next year for the alley that we're going to be doing. Am I correct?
Yes, and actually, one of the reasons that we're not asking for an increase is because we've managed over the last couple projects to have come in under budget, and we're actually able to utilize some of that money that we didn't spend previously. So we're recognizing that on our budgets.
Yeah, exactly. So we will have carryover to help on. Yes. Yep, there will be carryover. So we actually have a much lower budget on that one. You look at 8th Avenue Southeast, is nothing in there. That project should be completed this year, so we won't have anything in 17. 29th Street Southeast, this is over by the Walmart location, is what Shane is looking at. He feels as though that needs a total reconstruction. It's a very high traffic area for us.
Yeah, let me qualify total reconstruction.
Okay.
We're not planning to replace the curb and gutter or anything like that, just pavement surface. And right now, that pavement surface has not performed well. It's in dire need of upgrading. And essentially, I think what happened is when they come up with the design on that, they had no idea how heavily traveled that roadway was going to be. And I think our traffic counts and heavy loads over that stretch of roadway has substantially higher than what they designed it for. So now we just need to go in there and beef up the road surface so that it can last longer.
Shane, are we going to use asphalt or concrete?
Right now, I'm entertaining either one. My preference would probably be concrete, but depending on how our budget comes out with our estimates, we may have to consider asphalt, but I would like to find a way to do it with concrete.
Yeah,
How long?
Go ahead, Randy.
How big of area are you talking, Shane?
Well, it's pretty big because it's a 4-lane
Yeah, but I mean, from 29, from 212,
to the back lot line of Walmart.
okay, that's what I thought, so.
Right, and with that being part of the bypass, it is a lot of heavy traffic goes on there.
Yeah, when it was originally built, it wasn't planned for part of a bypass, so.
Yeah, it wasn't built for that. So then I'll move on to Mall Street reconstruction. It was requested by Shane that we put in $500,000 to do the mall. I said, I'm not going to do excuse me, I'm not going to put anything in the budget until actually all the stakeholders get together and there's an agreement signed before we're to do that. So it's out of the 17 budget. I can't remember if we put it in deeper down, 18 or 19, but it just didn't feel right that we would go in there quite yet. So that's still something we need to look at.
And you also mean with the approval of the council, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Right, and I don't think would be appropriate for us at this time, Mayor, to even have it in there, even a number in there, quite frankly, because,
Right.
without knowing what the mall ownership's gonna do and/or the other stakeholders, I know if I'm in their shoes and I see the city's committing $500,000 to it, I'm gonna do something different, so.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
we just it just needs to come out, period.
It is out, yeah. So we took out, that's entirely out of there. 15th Street South of 14th Avenue, this one is kind of a tricky one to really get a handle on where we're talking. If you look up there at the new Hosanna Church and you go to the south on 15th Street, there's problems up there, and there's problems with the storm sewer raised. Our equipment that's going up and removing snow, it's beating up our equipment, and it's beating up the storm sewer and other things. So we need to get up there and get that fixed.
What you might
Go ahead.
recognize out of that is if you've driven on that stretch of 15th Street, there's actually 2 steel plates that are sitting over the storm sewer inlets. And that's because the ground and frost has heaved up those structures and the pipe related to it such that they were sticking up out of the ground and no water was even able to go into them. So what this street project is, it's only about 1 block long, but it's gonna reset that storm sewer line back to its original grade so that it can function correctly. And then that pavement is also shot because of frost heaving motions there. So we just need to get that fixed because right now we're gonna start to throw a lot of money at maintenance there.
Yeah.
And I'd rather get it fixed permanently.
And then if you look at the dollar amount, it was actually requested for 200,000. That's a little bit misleading in a way because what we were looking at is the 14th Avenue to putting in turn lanes left and right onto the community center. We thought we'd hold off until we're
Correct.
actually going to rebuild that entire road rather than do that. So that's why only 100. Shane felt as though 100 could easily repair that storm sewer over there.
Yep, and if we find that budget's short, I do have one other small repair in that same area that I could add on to that work. So we're in pretty good shape.
So what are you gonna do differently to prevent that from happening again? I mean, the same thing.
There's a couple of things that we can try to do. One of the thoughts with those storm structures is you overbuild the foundation so that not only does it lift up on that, it would have to lift all the dirt above it. So you build a foundation floor around the bottom of the intake. We're gonna probably rebed that storm sewer with more of a granular material that would not let the water get frozen right around the pipe and act directly on the pipe. Things like that. We've got to try something different than what's there. So,
Mayor, can I just make a comment on the same topic, slightly different location? When you get onto 20th Street, which would be if you went from this location to the four-way stop to the east, go 1 more block and head south.
that's exactly the intersection.
There's a couple of areas
Yep.
there that, I think it's like a birchwood or birch something.
Yep, that's on my radar. We're watching that one, and if this one comes in under budget, we're gonna go after that one.
Yeah, that's a bad one over there. There's 2 areas over there that are bad, yep. So, okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And really, just jump in anytime if you have questions on this. Outdoor gun range parking and approach, because we are going to have, if we can get that outdoor range built, we need a parking lot. Now, we kicked around the idea of using millings and such. We weren't sure yet if that's the case, if we want to build a hard surface. But if we know where the building's going to go, we'd be okay putting in that parking lot. But we may just use millings that would go in there and make a parking lot for a temporary parking lot is what I'm saying, until we get the facility actually built in 2018.
Correct, and some of this money would need to be, right now, that's essentially just a field approach down off the highway, so we'd have to improve that a little bit to make it more suitable for traffic, so that's part of that.
The next one, Jackson Park parking area. if you have a boat out there or anything, you go out to Jackson Park to enjoy it. The parking lot has really fallen apart, and as well as City Park and places. But what we decided is that not able to do them both, we could overlay the Jackson Park area, clean that up, overlay it, get some better parking for boats so they aren't going into the kind of the slough area over there, get some ballards over there or something. So that's why we did leave $75,000 in for that particular one.
That little bike trail right to the west there too is absolutely terrible.
It is.
Off Jackson Park. It's not very far, but it's terrible. What's there? It's just. that
Yeah, I
really
think what you're
needs to be-
seeing is a lot of tree roots that
Yeah,
are just,
I
are
think that's what it
destroying
is.
that.
They're just
yeah.
lifted it up.
So we
You can
will
hardly
have
drive.
to address that.
Jay and I have been discussing, and that can be a discussion for much later here too, but Jay and I have been visiting between our two departments, and I've offered him whatever help he needs in pursuing some of these bike trail projects and repairs. So that is something that we're aware of, and we're gonna try to work together. Hopefully I can save him money to not have to go out to a consulting firm every time they do one of these projects, and help prepare the plans and the specs and work on those type of
Yeah.
issues.
And that makes a ton of sense. The next one was a real heartburn for me to work on. Shane was asking on the 20th Avenue South Bridge repairs. There's two bridges down there on the south side on that 20th Avenue on the bypass. And what is happening is that they are 5 years old, maybe 6 years old. There's getting to be some hairline cracks on them. And what Shane is, if you've driven on the new bridges or the bridge coverings on the interstate lately, you'll see they put an epoxy coat on there with a chip seal. It's just, they're extremely nice. And what Shane was asking for is $200,000 a bridge. I still struggle with that. So, and I did talk to Mike Will from the DOT and talk to him about the dollar amounts that are put onto those bridges. And I realize they're doing multiple bridges. They can get their prices a little lower. I just felt as though 5 years wasn't enough. I think we need to look at that and try to get a better handle on what the prices would be. I know that Vanessa gave you those prices, but I pulled them out for this particular time. I just didn't think we needed to do the bridges right now. And then the
Mayor, are we seeing cracks in there that would be abnormal at this age, or is it what we're seeing is typical?
Okay, there's a new approach, or the old philosophies of a bridge that you build it and then you don't do anything to it until you replace it is gone by the wayside. And most of that's because of federal funding, and we all recognize that on a national-wide basis that we're behind on repairing those kind of infrastructures. So one of the things that they've done is a lot of research on these, and with a bridge deck like that that's poured continuous concrete from end to end, there is no saw cutting, no jointing, no nothing. So then weather acts on that, and it does create small hairline cracks. That the theory is that after those cracks have appeared for the first 2, 3, 5 years is kind of the benchmark for this kind of work. Then what they're doing is they're putting this epoxy seal in, which is really a really runny compound, but it gets in those joints and then it sets up really hard and it seals them up. Then you put a chip seal over it so that you have grip back on your bridge for your tires. But what that's intended to do is prevent runoff with salt, primarily from the winter, from entering those cracks and deteriorating the steel that is essentially the backbone of the bridge. So they anticipate that you're going to get 15 plus more years out of a bridge life by putting these epoxy seal coats on it rather than ignoring it. So
right, and
it's
I
a
don't
preservation.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you that it has to be done. It's just I don't think we had enough information to understand
Right.
what we were jumping into.
Our
for sure.
estimate's likely fairly high.
Shane, does that epoxy go on the whole bridge deck or it just in the crack areas?
It's
The whole
actually
thing?
sprayed over the deck, intended to penetrate into those cracks just like rainwater would, and then it sets up in there and creates a barrier to keep the salt water from making it to the steel.
In fact, they put 2 coats of epoxy on. They put a
Yep.
coat of epoxy that dries, they put another coat on,
Right.
and then they put the chip on there.
Correct. Yep.
It's pretty amazing process that they do, and I think it will help, but I just need to, next year, we need to look at a closer price to get that put in there.
Yep, and if the DOT is gonna do more of that work in our area, will greatly help our bid prices. Because
Absolutely.
if somebody's in the area doing that work, and we're close by, say within an hour, it should be a benefit to us.
I think so. Any more questions on that?
Aren't they doing some of that out here right now?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Okay, then the 18th Avenue, 15th Street North construction, this here is what would go around the entire community center to finish up the top and the bottom on that, on the street side, the avenue side. What we thought on this particular one, rather than us funding the entire project, I believe that we could wait for a short while until there's actually some development that wants to take place up there. And then we would get the other landowners, they have agreements with us on doing this, but it is a funding mechanism that we would have to put in the entire funding, and then it's a payback time. So at this particular time, it just didn't seem like it was right to have that that project going on. All right, we're going to slide down here a little bit. Pavement analysis, that was done, so that was no issue there. Sidewalk, curb, and gutter. Shane, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, that's our annual program where we have a budget that handles some miscellaneous sidewalk work, and also we offer that program to the public if they want to initiate their own sidewalk improvement program that we pay up to, I think it's $2 a square foot that we pay towards them doing the work, and we have a inspection program, so we go out and we look at them, make sure the forming work and all that stuff meets the ADA codes, and then if everything's done successfully, we reimburse those folks for that money. And so we also can use it for, say, a piece of sidewalk deteriorated in a public area along one of our parks or something like that. We can also do that. Say a piece of sidewalk failed out in front of the police department or here, we have those funds to go after and fix them. So.
And it's a nice program, because if people have bad sidewalk in front of their house, they can come up, they can get that fixed, and they can apply for this, and it's just immediately right away we would pay those dollars, and it does help.
It comes up to about half, doesn't it, Shane? Pretty roughly?
It's probably just, it depends year to year, but it's close to half. I would probably say it might be just slightly
Touch under, yeah.
But that varies so much from contractor to contractor. It might not be even close to half for some and might be over half for others. Just depends on their overhead, I suppose.
How much usage, how many people are using that?
Quite a few, you'd be surprised.
Do you think we've done a real good job of publicizing that or promoting?
Well, we could do better.
I get a lot of questions on that.
Yeah.
And because of my memory, I oftentimes can't remember exactly what we do in that regard. I don't know if does anybody else have an issue? Okay, just me, I guess. But yeah, that's a question I get a lot. So there's obviously a lot of folks out there that don't know necessarily what our program is for repair or installation of sidewalks.
Right, and we'll work better at.
Yeah, if there's a way we could somehow, I don't know, Shane, how you do that.
What I would
Post
like to
something
do
on
is in the
our
spring.
webpage?
Yeah, we could put a
That'd be a
blurb on
good plan.
GovTV. I think in the spring, we should probably do a newspaper clipping or a flyer in the utility bill or something like that too.
That's only for repair though, right? That's not for,
Only for repair.
Yeah, it's not
Brand
for
stuff,
new-
They gotta
yeah.
pay 100% for themselves, yeah.
And that's just for not new construction, it's for existing homes that have sidewalk out there.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
I-
it's also not for commercial
Right.
property.
Just
I
wanted
know
to
like
make
in
sure.
my area, a lot of trees got knocked over 3 years ago, taking the sidewalks with them. Now
Right.
you got dirt there or something.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so.
We have a lot of WPA sidewalks still in there, in our neighborhood, lots and lots of them.
Yeah.
Interestingly, some of those are actually in better shape than some of the new, right? And some of the
Yeah,
new
they-
sidewalks, it's amazing.
They are. Now, the traffic signal improvement, it really, we had no budget in 2014. They spent $4,500 in 2015. They requested $60,000 in 2016. Nothing was spent in 2016. For some reason, the $60,000 carried over into 17. I said, let's just take that out because I really don't think we're going to have that expense out there anyhow. We just haven't seen that. It's really for new traffic lights, new traffic signals, and we haven't been doing any of that.
I think it was kept in. It's still on here. There was some discussion on, it was always put in there in case we did have a big light that would go down. They aren't cheap. Every once in a while, somebody will hit a big box, and that costs around $20,000 to repair. But this was kept in when the discussion of one-way, two-way, and then whether we would need to do some signal lights on 81, anything like that. So just until that discussion is completed and you know whether you're going to put lights in, stop signs, how you're going to work that, it wouldn't hurt to at least keep that there. It doesn't get used unless there's a purpose for it, but it's up to you guys if you want to keep it in there or not.
I think we should. It doesn't take much. It's either that or if something comes up, you're taking out a contingency anyway. So, Mayor, are we on that, and I want to jump ahead here a little bit, but there has been a lot of talk about what do we do on Kemp and what do we do on First Avenue South. Are we going just to make the switches? Are we going to four-way stops? Are we budgeting any money for that work within this plan, 417?
I have not budgeted anything for, to change the roads from one-way to two-way, just because I don't think we as a group really have come to grips with what we want to do yet.
But I thought, though, we kind of came to agreement to do First Avenue,
And we,
and then not do anything with Camp at this point in time, because we thought, well, if that got to be a larger project and there were jut outs or something at the corners and other things that would make a difference, but there wasn't going to be any major changes. I thought we kind of had said, let's get First Avenue switched.
and I know Rob did have discussion with the DOT, and they were fine with that on both intersections, so.
Would first go to stop signs then? Or would we continue with lights?
I think if we go back to a two-way, that the traffic doesn't warrant lights there typically.
Can we
Stoplights.
repurpose those for other areas?
Well,
or
if we have similar lights that are gonna be maintained in another location, we can, but those are so old that I doubt that they fit with any other signal in town.
And that's one of the problems we have keeping the ones that we got downtown going is trying to get parts, so.
So my anticipation is, if and when we go to two ways, that those will all become four-way stops and function just fine.
Would Broadway still have the light, though, probably?
I think that's the one that we did talk about leaving.
Yeah, that one.
I think Maple could go, but Broadway, I think, might need to stay,
Broadway and First Avenue South, yeah.
except that it's,
Yeah. So that would, actually, on First Avenue, there would be no change in the light other than Broadway would have to go to a two-way signal, and of course 81 would go to a two-way signal, so, or four-way, however you want to look at it, so.
You'd have to add one leg on that intersection of First and Broadway, because going westbound, you would have no light.
What kind of dollars would you need to get First Avenue changed over, do you think?
Rob and I would have to get together and.
But I mean,
discuss
it would be nice if we were able to get kind of a
Well,
ballpark
that's
idea
kinda-
that we could do.
That's kind of where it's been. It's we've never really sat
we
down
can
and
use
put
the
any
traffic.
figures
Mayor,
together,
could he
so.
do that and come back to us and
Absolutely.
we'll just look at adding that later when we have our further discussions on this?
We could certainly do that.
The time to do it would be if you're gonna do a seal coat on First Avenue South for, as far as markings and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually.
Go ahead and,
Yeah, because actually, that's one of the things that we discussed, is rather than, it takes quite a bit of money and effort to scrub out the old lines.
Mhm.
But if you just cover them up with seal coat and paint over them, sometimes it's more efficient, so.
And plus, you're getting the road seal coated at the same time, so.
Did the chamber ever
should we-
do that survey?
They are in the process of that right now.
I just hadn't heard any
Yeah,
more
because they
about
did add on, in the survey, the Kemp Avenue and the First Avenue on the two ways. Are you guys okay if we keep going and get
Yep.
this storm sewer and flood project out? Shane, if you want to, I think those two are directly under you. You can take those on, okay?
Okay. Our $100,000 miscellaneous storm sewer project is something previously I had mentioned, that repair at Marina Bay. That is kind of what we would try to take on, that kind of project with that money. The 200,000 miscellaneous drainage improvements right now is our earmark for whatever we attempt in the Eastwood area drainage project, and that budget, we'll find out if that's enough or not soon, so.
Okay, any questions on any of that? As we'll move on to the recreational facility improvements, and Jay is here if you have any direct questions, but you can see again the request. I will just make mention on the campground improvements, you'll see that $758,500 number. That included a lot of city park, a road, a couple parking lots. That was determined to be cut down to the $75,000, and it was brought up to the street system improvements because we figured engineering would kind of take a part of that. And the part that got missed was that $41,000 of that number was for some actual city park improvements. So in the new sheets that you have, that was put back in because that's my bad. I accidentally deleted it. So that got put back in. And then Mayor, if you have any comments about any of your other changes that you made, or if anybody has any questions for Jay.
I just remember Jay was not happy with you.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay, Jay.
I put it back.
We have numbers here. The field house, they were looking for $83,000, and the field house has taken dollars every year. So far, we've put in, just on maintenance on the building, close to $250,000. We had another $80,000, and we're looking at, we've had improvements of over $40,000 since we took it over. I did take that down to $34,450 on the improvements. We'll have some, I think there's some roof issues over there that Jay has leaks at this particular time. Trees and removals, they're requesting $15,000. They got $15,000. They had spent substantially more than that. And according to your guys, and I want to just let you know too that when we went through this budget, we had each one of Jay's supervisors sitting in the room. We drilled down on this thing immediately, just one by one by one. Each supervisor told us exactly what they're after. Did they really need X amount of dollars? Well, yes, they did, or well, I could get by with this. You know, we don't want to short them, but we want them to be as close as we can to an actual budget. So that's where they came with those numbers.
I got a comment on the tree removal. I really appreciate what we've done around town, and keep working on that. It's really, the looks is much better, and I think it would be, in the past, we talked about being a safety concern too. So I really commend you, and let's keep working on that.
Well, and the new
Now,
equipment.
I talk about the stumps more so is what I'm talking about, is what I'm referring
Okay.
to.
And I think we would like to, at some point in time, start taking a look at some of these older cottonwoods and start taking some of those down little bit by little bit. They're dying, but yet they're still giving all that cotton off on them, and people are not happy with those. So we're gonna try to work a little by little on those trees, kind of clear up the town on those. And then we'll move on to walkway, roadway. Jay, if you wanna touch on that?
That's basically similar to what Shane has been talking about, just making accessible access to the different park areas and to some of the facilities within those park areas, such as the playgrounds. And we're going to hit 6 more areas this summer, and we're getting down to the end of them, so it would be nice to finish that project up.
Okay, any questions on that? Otherwise, let's move on to the next one, Jay, the campground improvements, if you can give a little bit of update on that for us.
Well, basically, the campground improvements, there's both some interior and exterior improvements to facilities, basically comfort stations and shelters that Doug has at City Park, that shingles are bad, that type of thing. And then the other thing, just small facilities like fire rings get destroyed, buoys get a lot of abuse during the summer, and they need to be replaced, and these types of things that we want to take care of in that budget. But then the other part of that would be the docks at Bow City, the boat docks at Bow City and Jackson Park. They're in pretty tough shape, and have been working with the game fishing parks, and there are DJ funds available that we will actually have $24,000 that shows in our budget, and we will be responsible to pay the initial cost, but upon completion of those projects, we will be reimbursed 75% or $18,000, so that's a pretty nice program to work with.
And those docks would be similar to the ones over here at Lions Park, are they not?
No, this would be a boat dock. It would be similar to the slide-in boat docks that
Okay.
you would see at Sandy Shore or Pelican or places like that.
Jay, on that, and Mayor, on that point of docks, you know, the lake being so low, looking ahead to next year, you know, if we don't get good runoff,
In trouble.
our lake's in trouble. Do we have the ability, and I don't even know if it would make sense or if we even can, but do we have the ability to clean out some of those areas to make those deeper at the launch areas? I know that's one of the things that people say, I can't even get my boat in. You know, it doesn't matter how far the dock goes, you just can't get your boat in. Has there been any, I don't know how that works if we run out of, eventually you run out of ramp,
You
right, I
do.
suppose?
And it's so difficult with the glacial lakes in northeastern South Dakota, because a lot of them are bowl shaped, that you have their slope, and then they kind of go like this, that you lose that slope, and you really can only go so far. Missouri River, that's a different story, because they can go forever, but we can't really in the glacial lake, so it's just one of those things that you have to deal with. You know, I know previously, working with some of the lakes in the area, we've had docks that have stood out of the water for 3 years because just didn't have the water depth to use the ramp.
I know I have had a lot of people this summer talk to me about the lake, meaning that, and primarily the ramps. You know, like I said, I told them, I said, I don't know what we can do. I don't know what, if you don't have water, it's kind of hard.
And
Exactly.
it's more difficult with a bunk than it is
Yeah.
with rollers.
And so that's just what I've been telling them. I don't know if there's anything we can do, but I do know I've been asked that question, so that's why I asked that today.
I've heard a lot of people had to go to Memorial Park because they can't launch from, it must be a deeper ramp over there or something, but they can't launch from.
they're talking about taking their dock out of Memorial Park.
Well, presently at the city park dock, we're basically right at the water's edge with the last plank. So when you could go off to launch your boat, you're actually getting onto the lake bottom.
Jackson, I think, is better, in better position, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I apologize, you were talking about the other dock that we're going to use at McLaughlin Park, and that is, I apologize, that is exactly the same one that we're presently using at Third Avenue that's getting so much use. That the McLaughlin Pond is going to become an urban fishery, just like we've been so successful with the Third Avenue Pond. So that's going to be really nice, and it's going to be the same DJ project, the 75-25 match.
Jay, on one other topic, and we talked about it last year, as it related to City Park. I know you got your City Park project, but has any work this summer been done in the newer campground area in regards to the road or the path that goes through there and the pads? If we get any moisture at all, that's terrible over there. The road's underwater, the pads are underwater. They're at the same height as the grass, and when we get any water, it's low there. Is there anything that's been looked at for that at all?
Well, Rob has been out there and done some work, but we'll just need to get a road project in there and kind of look at that whole area there.
It's just the whole road system and pads on, not all of them, but a lot of them just need to be higher. It's just Otherwise, they're underwater, they're mucky, you can't, he's gotta shut some of them off. I saw Doug out there pumping water constantly, trying to get things dried out. You know, to make that, and it's, you know, it gets such nice use that, great when it's dry, but boy, you get any water, it's a mess over there.
Right.
So, just food for thought.
So I got a question, if we back up onto the cemetery, what was that, there was 50,000, what was that taken out of there?
Mayor, it was for, was it to repair roads?
Repair roads.
And, Mayor, you want to comment on?
I missed your question, John.
It was the one right before the cemetery one, 50,000.
That was for repairing the roads that you had removed from your recommended budget?
Exactly. They were looking at redoing all the roads or a number of the roads within city, or in the cemetery. And we did just pull that out for this time. They're pretty good shape.
Can I back us up a couple more too? On the city auditorium, I realize we don't have a long-term plan for that, but did we get the immediate repair needs taken care of that we had discussed last winter? There were some things that needed to be done pronto. I mean, did we get that done on the auditorium?
Well, what we did on the auditorium is we actually just stopped the leaks on the roof. We haven't repaired any of the sewer problems that are going on and some of the water problems in there. It's just kind of a dormant situation right now. They use the basketball courts and such, but they really aren't. The building isn't that great right now.
Yeah, we repaired the downspouts, and that's as far as we went with
Yeah,
it.
it's kind of funny because the major leak was not directly on the roof. It was the downspouts were the issue, and ProTech, I think, went in there and fixed them up pretty fast.
Mayor, are we going to, you know, as we go into 2017 and the opening of the community center, you know, we're gonna have to decide on a purpose for the auditorium at some point, and sooner than later. So I hope that's on our agenda of discussion and to determine what we do with that asset.
Absolutely. You know, that's a big deal out there, you know, 'cause you've got X amount of people that want to save the auditorium. You've got X amount of people that want to tear down the auditorium. Then you have another group of people that want to kind of redo the auditorium so they could use it into a facility. Just for instance, you know, I have just talked to some folks this morning at a meeting that the county, if they're looking at building their jail over there or their facility, they would like to, if they chose that particular spot, they would like to take that over and refurbish that and make it usable for their needs. So there's a lot of different areas of going on in the auditorium, and you use it a lot. You know, you have a lot of stuff that goes over there.
Yes, a lot of programs go on over there, and they will continue until the time a decision is made on the outcome of the auditorium.
Right. But I think there will be something that has to come in front of this board, probably in 2017 and not too far out, that a decision will have to be made on what we're going to do. Do we continue to put $30,000, $40,000 a year in just utility costs and add another $30,000, $40,000 in repairs? We need to make a decision, and we'll do that, I think, early in 17.
Is that or is that not on the historic register?
It is.
Does anybody else have any other questions on the recreation facility improvements so that we can kind of keep this going? We got a lot of park and rec to go through yet, too. If not, on the industrial park
Wait,
and
I want to back up there if we're not going to go through the rest of these. I want to touch on that sunshades for Foundation Fields. I know we had some discussion last summer. A bunch of us went out and kind of met out at Foundation Fields. We talked lighting, sunshades. I was under the impression we were going to get sunshades this year. We did the lighting, and I guess I was kind of under the assumption we were going to do sunshades in 17, but it looks like they're taken out. We had, I think, kind of told that baseball group, or some of us had, that we were going to work pretty hard to get their sunshades put up out there. I just wondering why we are taking that out of the budget. I think it should stay in.
I think what we've decided is that you're going to see additional dollars going out to the new complex to get those. There's a lot of unknown expenses that are coming out there. And you guys know that we have many dollars, well, Bruce and John know that we have many dollars that are gonna come out there. So we kind of diverted some of those dollars to that particular area. We did pull the sunshades out of there, and then we did pull another $180,000 out of there for lighting of another field. They have the one field out there, and I did pull, and I mean, that's your guys' opportunity if you wanted to add sunshades in and another $180,000 for lights, you're welcome to do that. It would be hard to find that in this budget time.
Yeah, I guess I'm not, the lights probably are not a huge issue, but I think at least, I don't know if this was just one field, Jay? That this amount that was in there, was that sunshades for one field?
No, that would be for pretty much the entire campus there.
Go ahead. Okay.
Comment I would make on that is, it isn't just sunshades, those are actually protectors from foul balls. And when you go to the ballpark, it's a great field, you got a lot of space out there, but that's a question of if or a when, not if. So the dual purpose is it does make it a lot more comfortable, especially in the hot weather for the fans, but it is kind of add to the safety factor.
In regards to the light mirror, I don't think that's an issue out there. The set of lights that we got out there, which thanks to you and to this council for that, was the most important assets out there as far as the lights go. I do believe that, it's brutal out there when you're out there in the middle of the summer, and because they do play earlier. That's the one thing about it, is they play earlier because they don't have lights. To me, that's more of a reason why you need the shades there more so than you do, maybe if they did play later at night. But, if there was some place to come up with that money or to take something else that's in here and move that, I think it should at least be reconsidered. So maybe that's something that we can, again, talk about and see if and where we can find something. Come back, just like we're going to come back with Shane's estimate on that other project as well.
And I think Shelley and I can visit about that and see if there's any adjustment that we can make to.
And at this time, the way that everything sits, there is enough current resources for that one piece. I guess, this is kind of the public hearing, and the next time you're going to see this 2017 budget is in an ordinance form for first reading. So anything we can get ironed out now that you want added, I would rather have you make a motion to do that, rather than wait till the first reading and then start changing the budget ordinance itself. So,
So you want a motion to move that back in?
if that's the way that you guys are working, there would be funds available to do that, but that's up to you, and if you guys feel strongly about it, I'd rather have you make that decision now rather than
I'll make a
later,
motion
and then.
To move that 59,000 back into the foundation field improvements for sunshades.
Okay, so I have a motion by John, and I have a second by Beth. Any discussion on that? Any further discussion?
Well, Mayor, just one question. I know she said we have the funds, but, referencing back to the 60,000, that we really don't have a defined use on a traffic signal improvement.
Exactly right.
Why not pull that out? And if we get there, we pull that out of contingency if we get to a project.
And I'm good with that. Would you like to have that motion redone on
No,
that?
why don't we just make the motion to add the
Okay.
sunshades? If you want to remove the signal lights, then do it in a separate motion.
Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So we'll add the $59,000 back in. Now I'll look for a motion to remove the 60,000 from the street.
Can we leave that 60,000 until we hear from Shane on this First Avenue thing?
It's not gonna cost that much to do that. $20.
What we can also do is, if nothing is done in 2016, you as a council
We
can
can
make the
transfer.
recommendation to carry over
that
the
over.
funds
So if we move to
from.
17, we can carry the 16 over into 17 without
Right,
any
I mean,
issue.
we've already committed current resources for that already.
So I think we would be just fine with that. So let's do that. So I think I would look for a motion in a second to remove the 60,000 out of the 2017 budget for the, find it here, the traffic signal improvements.
So moved.
Motion by Mike, second by Randy. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I think that's probably a nice deal, guys, because it is a tough question on the traffic signal improvement that we had on there. All right, good call. Anything else you want to talk on some of these items before we move forward?
Nope. The only thing that I was going to mention was the other addition that was made on the senior citizen building improvements. We always had $5,000 that was put in there. That's for any time the senior center would call and say the roof is leaking, the downspouts are falling apart. We've repaired some sidewalk. We've done some different things. In a previous administration, it was taken out and we were just carrying forward the money. That only can last for 3 years or until the money is spent. Well, then it gets hard to remember to put that back in, which I did forget to put it back in. So,
Yeah, and just so you know,
I would
we
rather
are
have
gonna
it in there.
We are going to have expenses this year coming up on the senior citizens building.
Right.
There are some things that have to get done.
Yep.
So
that was added, and it was
we
also
need
added
that.
to the long term. So it drops off. It doesn't carry over. If it gets used, it gets used. If it doesn't, it just goes away. But it's just a place marker in there so that we always kind of have a little bit set aside to take care of those folks at the senior center. So I apologize. It's under the industrial park and other infrastructure. So I apologize again. That was my just kind of forgetting to put that in because it hadn't been put in the past. Otherwise, everything else is the same. The debt reflects all of the bonds that we have, all the refunding we've done. So those numbers shouldn't change substantially in the future. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And then the transfers out. We did add to the airport, and that's because of that runway project. That's the 5% of the city's match for that. And then the other two remain the same. So if anybody has any questions on those, otherwise we'll move on from that. Okay, so we'll just kind of get into Park and Rec. Do you guys want to take a short break? It's 7:41. Do you want to take a short break before we start with Park and Rec? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Had to leave, but he'll be here shortly.
Just go to the golf course.
So if you want to take off where we stopped, that'd be great. You ready to go, guys? Okay, we're on.
Okay, so we're at the start of Park and Rec funds. Just for the sake of time, and just to kind of save Jay from losing his voice by the time we're done here, I'll just kind of introduce each one of the departments within the Park and Rec, kind of just skim over. If you guys have questions, then just ask at that time, and then he can just talk about what you guys want to talk about and concerns you have. So the first one would be supervision. This is probably the smallest of the departments that they have. They have the 3 people. Just going to touch on the one significant change in here is an additional person. This is the only person that was added to the 2017 budget. And I'll kind of have the mayor elaborate on that just a little bit. Part of it is because of some of the new facilities and to just kind of give some additional support. And that was an additional assistant superintendent position. I think we said assistant director is what it was called. And Mayor, do you want to kind of elaborate on that just a little bit?
You know, Jay has the largest department within the city of Watertown. And what we were looking at is adding on an assistant director that would really kind of be in charge of 4 different areas of the Park and Rec. We're looking at this assistant director to be the city. These people would report to this assistant director, who would report to Jay. And when it comes budget time, they would do their budget work through him, come through to you, and back up to myself. Cemetery, city park manager, golf course superintendent, and the community rec center. Those 4 departments would actually report directly to the director, the assistant director of Parks and Recreation. I think what it will do is it will bring a numbers person, more of a finance person that can look at the budgets closer on these 4. I think they're going to need some help through this period of time. I think it's important that, we're putting these dollars into these projects. We need to have a little tighter control, a little more watch on them to come to Jay. I don't know, any thoughts on that? That's been my game plan to do this.
Mr. Mayor, I actually like the idea. I think that if we're successful with the new multi-purpose center, we should be running a lot of things through there on an ongoing year-round basis. So I would think that watching those numbers is going to be a lot more work than it is right now.
Well, and I think kind of having that assistant director will free Jay up, because there's a whole nother side of that, and that's the rec programs and the different facilities, and we keep adding facilities. So, there needs to be a lot of attention on those too. What kind of facility fees, what kind of charges do we have, what kind of programs do we run, what kind of people do we need? That type of thing is going to need a lot more attention. And it just kind of frees him up to have a different focus.
Exactly. And then you look at the other side to this, so we have an assistant director that's going to be working with that particular end of it. What we would then have is we also have currently our recreation superintendent, our park superintendent, the zoo superintendent, the facilities manager, and the senior activity director. Those would still have to go through the Park and Rec Board, which would then, work with Jay on that. But those people actually would report directly to Jay. So Jay would have those people reporting to him, and then the assistant director would be reporting to Jay, which would take a lot off of his plate for the small daily detail.
Mayor, do we have by title an assistant director today?
We do not. This
Okay,
is
we
a new
don't have.
position. Yeah, this will be a new position.
Okay, so,
Go ahead, Glenn.
I know a group of us met and discussed this back in December, maybe last year. Does this address, the conversation or the concerns that we had that day?
I think it would. I think what this would do is take a lot of the concerns off of everybody's plate, and we would really be in a better, tighter control of what's going on in all the departments. And not that there's anything strange that we're worried about. It's just, I think that it's what we've added with the community center, with the new ball diamonds, and with 2 new sheets of ice that are coming up. It's getting to be a lot there.
well, I think too, Mayor, if I look at a couple of them that this person would be responsible for, and the 2 that I'm initially talking about is the golf course and the community center. Speaking of the golf course, it has been our director. If you look back at our previous directors, including Jay, they don't golf. Going back to Roger Adams, and I think the success of that golf course is going to take somebody that really has a closer sense of what's going on there, and so that we can have a higher level of interaction and direction and management over that facility, assisting the people that we have there. I think it'll be a huge benefit for the golf course. As far as the community center is concerned, somewhat in the same thing. John's got a board that he deals with, and they play a vital role, but his only greatest help is you and Shelley when he needs stuff, and he really needs a higher level of direct support, closer support than what I think he's gotten in the past as well. I think this would be a great thing for both of those assets, especially when we're bringing on and making the investment in the community center. So I'm all for this. I think it'll be a really good thing.
And just one other, the reason for the cemetery and the city park, those are two other departments that come really close to self-funding themselves. The other thing is that we've noticed, and the mayor is kind of on the front line of this, that the parks superintendent is also, it's a position that's really getting big, and it's probably too big for one person to really have that span of control, and there's been some issues. So that was another concern, in trying to fill that position. How do we make it manageable and we don't kind of set people up to fail by having a span of control so big that they can't manage it? So those two won't be under that park superintendent, and they'll just really have parks and forestry to deal with. And I think it'll be better with the trails, with the ball diamonds, with the different parks. I think we're really gonna get a better focus. And
Well, I think you're right. I think that it will allow Jay to focus more and drill down on each one of these other departments and spend more time with them, because this will help. This will help a lot. And thanks, Mike, for the comments about that, because I do think that those two departments really will need some help on that. And, then you take a look at the other side, the revenue side right here. When you take a look at your recreation superintendent or your park superintendent, you've got people that are going to be taking on a lot of responsibility there for concessions and things such as that are going to happen in the new facility, and they will be busy, but they will continue to report directly to you. Yeah. So that's where I'm going with that. I hope you all understand the whys, and I think it's going to be a good choice, a good deal for Watertown.
Well, if you look at it, we're making one of the largest investments in quality of life issues in the city of Watertown that we've ever made. We owe the taxpayers the right to, or not the right, but the quality to run those facilities. I mean, that'd be like opening up a grocery store and not hiring anybody. We need qualified people to do it, and I think to just say, okay, Jay, here you go, we got a bunch more facilities, make them run. That ain't gonna happen. And like I say, we've made investment in tax dollars for the community. Let's make sure we do it right, and I like his idea, so.
Yeah, and Randy, I just want to make it clear, it's not that John or Todd can't take those, it's just that they need more help at any given time, and I think this will really help them.
okay, if you don't have any other, do you have any other questions for Jay on anything else that you saw in the supervision?
Yeah, if I may, I would like to ask a couple of them if they want to help us kind of get together and draw up with Jay and Audra and myself and Shelley to get a job description that we would understand. Okay, I'll plan on Mike. Anybody else want to jump in there? Okay, and Beth. So we're going to just plan on that, guys.
Thank you for that. The next one is the rec programs. If you look, there isn't a whole lot of change on the expenditure side, and then there's not a whole lot of capital improvements. Is there any specific questions that anybody has? Go ahead, Don.
Gee, I just had one general question about new programs are always part of your mission. And I may have even asked you the same question last year, but at what point do we delete a program? What is it? Do you have parameters on participation rates, or when is it? What caused you to delete a program? Because tastes certainly change over time.
You need your speaker, Jay.
Now? Not sure that a program is ever completely deleted, but a lot of times it depends on who we can find as an instructor for that program. Oftentimes, on some of the different programs, an instructor will come in and actually help recruit people into that class. So, it may not be participated in for a year or so, but it's still out there if something transpires.
Any other questions anybody has?
Can I just take 1 second to step back to the previous discussion we had? Mayor, we will expect in the February and March timeframe to open up the new facility, the community center. I know we're working on the 2017 budget. I think it would be a good idea for us to move on hiring that position before the 2017 budget hits so that that person can assist in that process, learn about the facility. So that would mean what? Most likely some kind of a hiring them into 16. And
I
then
think
what do we do at the
we
end?
can do that within the budget. We'll be okay. So
Yeah,
I think that's important because there's a lot to learn.
There's
about
so
it.
much going on now. If we had that person today, quite frankly, it would be very beneficial. So I think the sooner we hire them, the better we are, and hopefully we don't wait till 17, because we need to roll when 17's coming in, so.
And you can do that, maybe, have them here in December. I don't know that we can, unless you guys are pretty confident that you're going to adopt this budget. I mean, most of the time, we don't act on things until you formally adopt it, but if you want to do that, but even if you had them here in December, that'd give you 3 to 4 good months before the rec center
I think what we
opens.
should do, though, is we should get together right away and get that job description done.
I agree,
And,
but by the time you advertise and interview
It's gonna move
and
us
go
into
through, it'll be a
October.
couple months. So even if you could have a person starting the beginning of December and
Yeah.
just have them here for 3-4 months,
Yeah,
I think
November,
it'd be.
December, because we are looking at,
Mhm.
a February date. So I think the sooner we move on this, the better off we are. Okay.
Anything else on the recreation programs? And this too is a budget that I think they kind of anticipated a little bit more revenue, but it's really hard to know. So it's one of those that I think we're going to have to really watch, and it'll probably fluctuate the numbers a little bit. We might have to come back and visit it, but without knowing how many more participants and that type of thing, sometimes it's hard to. You don't want to go crazy on the expenditure side either, but just something to really watch. The next one is the golf course. And on this one, and I'll just kind of mention on the one change, you'll see the rent and machinery. Basically, the new golf carts, we don't actually own them. We lease them. So at the end of the 5 years, they go back and we'll get more. In the previous lease, we owned them at the end of 5 years, and it was our decision to send them back, get a pretty good size rebate, and get all new ones. This one doesn't quite work that way. It's kind of like leasing a vehicle. The cost to buy these is almost as expensive as what we leased them for in the 5 years, so they're going to go back. In that case, we can't say that we have to put them as rent. So we're basically renting them for 5 years. So we moved them away from the principal and interest, and we put them into the rent. So it'll show this big increase, but we really didn't do anything other than just move the line for our financial statements.
All right, is this an indication in that the cart lease is up after 16 then? Is that what we're saying?
Nope. It's just we had it in as debt service, and it's really not. It's basically a rent payment, so it should have been up in rent all along. I can't remember.
We'll go
Last
through this
year.
again.
So this is our
2019
annual lease
with
payment
police.
is basically what this is?
Right.
Yes.
And
Right.
any leases come out of the first penny sales tax, whereas if we bought them, they'd come out as second penny sales tax, correct?
No, not really. It's just how we were showing them. We used to show them as a debt payment, which would mean that at the end of 5 years we owned them. We're not going to own these. We're basically renting them. So it's renting the machinery and equipment. So we're just kind of showing it up above on the O&M as a rent versus as a debt payment that we're going to pay something off and own it.
Just so I
That's-
know, does that money come out of first penny or second
No,
penny?
it actually is coming out of the Park and Rec, which is subsidized by the first penny.
Right,
so-
If we were buying them, it would be coming out of a second penny.
Nope,
No?
it actually
It
came
wasn't
out of the.
capital either?
Nope, it came out of the Park and Rec all along, and
Oh,
it was
okay.
being paid for by the revenues generated by those cart rentals, which does create a pretty good revenue source. So does anybody have any specific questions? They had requested 2 mowers, 1 new, 1 replacement. The new mower in the mayor's proposed was removed and put farther into the long term. And then Spencer's going to do some work on their network system at the golf course as well.
Jay, are you familiar with what this mower is that's in here?
This is gonna be one of the 14-blade greens mowers, just like the one Todd has now, so that if we look at a championship course, the red and yellow course, that it will be the same greens mower on both courses.
Okay. Do you know, have they resolved the issue with our newest mower that we've had problems with ever since we bought it? The, not greens, but the fairway
That
or
rough mower or?
fairway mower?
I think it's better. I haven't talked with Todd about it. Todd hasn't mentioned it, so that
Could you-
Jacobson that we had, yeah.
Yeah. Could you check on that?
Okay.
Because we got to do one thing or another. It's either working and it's right, or we've got some work to do with the mayor and our city attorney, I think.
I think it's much improved.
Okay.
Any other questions on the golf course for Jay? As we move to the aquatic center, there is no full-time people in this department. This is something that comes under the recreation superintendent, also runs the aquatic center. You can see the different adjustments. The insurance premiums, our insurance carrier, as you guys know, when we did our renewal, kind of changed how they did their allocation. So the insurance premiums were nothing other than it was just how they reallocated the premiums, and the aquatic center just took a little bit bigger hit than some of the other departments. And then you can see what their capital purchases are. If you have any questions on those, you can ask Jay directly on that. Otherwise, I'll open it up for any questions.
How many radios are they replacing?
Don't know the exact number, but it would be quite a number for communications around the pool area, because at any one time, if you're looking at a shift, you're going to have 12 lifeguards on duty and 14 attendants, and then there's also the concessions and front desk staff that are working there, so it's quite a number, and you do need that communication.
Any other questions?
Jay, are these being replaced because they don't work? Are they being replaced because we've got them today, correct?
Yes, we have them, but it's kind of age and functionality that they need to be replaced. Too oftentimes, they're not working, and so we don't have the communication that we desire.
One of the nice things about this particular area, the aquatic center, is that it really does take care of itself. You know, we are not putting a ton of money into that to keep it up and running.
Okay, just so you guys all know, according to their request, the two-way radios, it says 18, and they were purchased in 2006. So, any other questions on the aquatic center? If not, we'll move on to baseball, softball complex. This, of course, is one that has changed quite a bit with the new complex that's set to open in 2017. The personal services, of course, there will be more part-time people that will be needed because there will be 2 fields that will need to be groomed simultaneously. Another thing that was added, the decision was made between the mayor and the Park and Rec that the city would take over the concessions. That's something that has never been done in the past, but it would potentially be a good revenue source. And so the merchandise available for resale is for both fields, so it would be for the adult complex and for the youth. There's been some talk that there would maybe be some malt beverage sales out at the adult complex, so it's hard to say how much you're going to need. So it'd be $25,000 per field, and then we also have a revenue source for that, and we kind of mirrored that on the aquatic center. The aquatic center budgets for $25,000 expenditure, and I think it's like 40-some thousand on the
40.
revenue. So that's kind of how we fashioned this. And again, we're just going to have to see how that goes. And that extra part-time staff will also be, because we've never had part-time staff doing the concession stand.
Shelley, you're losing me. I understand the expense, but I don't see
Yep.
the revenue amount reflected in the,
The revenue section would be pages 13 to 15.
And maybe that didn't get done on the Word pages. Because that kind of came after our budget meetings when we had kind of made that determination. Where are we at?
If you look on
Yeah,
page 14.
it didn't get added. Yep, if you look under baseball, softball, under concessions, there is a estimated budget of $85,000. And then the $7,000 is the light rental. So that's just something that didn't get carried forward once those changes were made. So I'll make a note of that.
And that will, that particular item will have a lot of discussion through the Park and Rec, but it's kind of the direction that if you take a look at any major ball field or anything out there, the Sioux Falls is the Brookings, they kind of take care of their own and is a revenue source to help offset a lot of the expenses.
Jay, just to, under your capital purchases, you've got a line painter. I'm assuming that's for painting your foul lines
Correct.
at all the fields, correct?
It wouldn't be all the fields. We purchased one recently, and that one we kind of use in the west part of town for foundation and cook, and then instead of transporting it all over the place, we'd have another line painter to use at the new complex as well as the Enza soccer complex.
Okay. On the utility vehicle for 4,600?
That's interesting, Mike. I'll talk about that.
Okay.
That's the one when you heard Mike Berger say he was going to get a new one. Yeah, so he's going to get that. Mike said that it does need a transmission. It's going to cost about $4,500. We put those dollars in to get that repaired for him. Yes.
The only other thing is, last year, we budgeted for a new grooming type machine. Not sure exactly how that's worked. I know early in the season, I got a lot of good feedback out at Cook Complex from the softball players. What is your plan for the new facility in regards to grooming?
We will be transporting that one to all three complexes. That Sand Pro that we purchased last year.
Jay, how often would we do that to those different facilities? How often do you anticipate we would regroom them?
Well, I would say weekly for sure, but then, sometimes at other times, staff, like especially at Cook, will come in with the box blade too and work it up with that, so like especially before tournaments and that type of thing to loosen that field and aerify it a little bit.
No, I don't want this to sound bad, but if we're able to move that piece of equipment that's used daily, why aren't we moving the line painter right with it?
It's a little more technical, and if we don't have to move it as far, it kind of gets off plumb, so to speak, and you want to keep your line straight as best you can, and just works out well. And, the soccer complex, that's a lot of lines out there that we paint, so.
Yeah, this is going to be utilized for the soccer and for the ball diamonds.
Okay.
So Jay, we're saying the line painter, we would transport back and forth, so we'd use it out there or not?
It
It's
would
just
be
gonna
the
stay-
field groomer that we transport, and we'd keep the line painter on site
keep the line-
between
okay.
Kansas Soccer Complex and the new softball complex.
Thank you.
Do you remember what the cost of that field equipment was? Was it like 15,000, I believe?
No, it was greater than that.
For the groomer?
25 for the
That's
groomer, maybe
Sanpro.
it's
I'm thinking like 27.9.
Yeah, I think there was 30,000 budgeted, wasn't
Yeah.
there?
Jay, do you think that 8 tournaments is what you'll look for on all summer long? It doesn't sound like very many to me with 3 big complexes like this.
Well, we stayed conservative on that because we don't know, but I would anticipate that we would get more tournaments in with everything going on, you know, depending on the size of the tournament. And, you know, there's some small tournaments that go on in town that we probably don't have listed in these figures too, that are just one day, 6, 8 team events, 4 team events even sometimes, so.
Jay, with, you know, I know there was a lot of talk about tournaments for fast pitch and the need for portable fencing. Where is that? I mean, what's our plan for that?
It's pretty much in the discussion mode yet, Bruce. We haven't really planned. I want to talk to Gary Young about that and see just what his, you know, because he tend to be the fast pitch guru, and see if it's his desire to go out to the new complex, or I know he likes to use a couple of the smaller fields at Cook Complex as well as Foundation Field, and just get the feedback from him and see where we need to go on portable fencing.
Any other questions on the budget for softball, baseball complex? If not, we'll move on to the auditorium / field house. Not a whole lot of change going on here. And the network upgrades is kind of the same that you've seen. Spencer and the IT department had identified some issues with some of the networks that he requested to get put into the budget so they can fix some of those things, and that's kind of the only capital portion of that. So if anybody has any specific questions, you can sure ask that.
Jay, now that we're a couple years into the field house approach, how much revenue would you have seen in 15 or expect in 16 that we get out of that from rental?
Well, you know, it's hard telling. We don't really separate between the field house and the auditorium. At this time, it's kind of grouped together, but it's tremendous the amount of use that the field house gets. Not so much right now, but it'll be starting real soon. But like even this summer, when we had very few of them, but when you had a rainy morning, the baseball teams would come in there and work out for an hour, and so they would get their practices in, and, you know, pretty soon soccer's going to be in there about every night, and football programs and that type of thing. So it really is a wonderful facility.
We don't keep track of like rental income by auditorium or by field house?
I believe that
In
when
our,
TK brought that in, he had that broke down. I don't have that
So
with
did-
me.
I don't
But
either,
we
but-
have the exact numbers, what was at the field house, what was at the
I would think we
auditorium.
would.
I have that, yes.
yeah, I was referring that in the budget numbers here that I have
No.
tonight, they're combined.
No,
Oh, okay.
TK has that actually right down to,
I know the use. I'll be honest, of all the things that we've done in the community, this is the one that I hear the most about, is this field house, and it's so small. I hear so much about that, and very positively. And that's why I was curious as to what our revenue generation was from a rental standpoint there. But maybe you could
I'll
just,
get that for you.
just email it to me if you, just a curiosity question. Anything else, as we look forward to, you know, some other things that we look to do potentially within the community, so.
Can you copy that to me also, Jay?
I think just send it to everybody.
Okay.
Any other questions about the auditorium field house budget requests for 2017? If not, we'll move over to the zoo. There was a few changes that were made early on, maybe even before the budget process started. We met with Lake Area Zoo Society and talked about how the revenues are split up and who collects what and who pays for what. And so the decision was made to have the city take over certain memberships, the concession stand, the gift shop, which had previously all been taken outside of the city, so you didn't see any of that, the revenue coming in or the expense going out. And so and then they used to just give one lump sum subsidy. And so that's changed, so you'll see that there's a little bit different shift in numbers. Again, kind of the first year, and we're kind of estimating what that's going to be. So, I just have to take some time and understand that. That's why you'll see like the merchandise available for resale. Those are based off of the numbers that LAZS provided, that they've been using in the past. The banking service is also increased because LAZS was paying for some of those credit card fees for the concession stand, the gift shop. That will now become part of the city's expense.
But I think, Shelley, what this will do, and to the council, this will actually give us a much better handle on what comes in and what comes out of the zoo.
Yes.
So that we really fully understand this.
Yep.
And I want to thank Glenn also for kind of putting that together and working with LAZS and going through that, because it was very, very beneficial for us. And we're not trying to kick them out of the way. I
Nope.
think they didn't really want to take on all the responsibility of this
Yeah.
either anymore.
Yeah, I think it became kind of a little bit of a muddled, they were kind of taking some day-to-day operations, the city was kind of taking some day-to-day operations, and really their mission is to support the zoo and to take donations and endowments, that type of thing, which is a different focus than what the city is doing on the day-to-day operations for the zoo. So just kind of, I think, clean the lines, divided, and the city takes the day-to-day. They kind of worry about the endowments and some of those other things, and I think it just helps a little bit better.
Just a comment, I think we're all concerned about the dollars that it takes for the city to maintain that zoo. But I think by the reorganizing, the restructuring that we're doing, a year from now, we're sitting here, we'll have a better feel exactly what does go in and out of that zoo out there, and then help us make decisions going forward relative to the zoo.
So, there's just a few minor capital parts of that.
One
Is
of
there
the things,
anybody?
just I got to put a little humor into this. One of the things on the zoo, Dan wanted a car, and I think I mentioned to you guys, or I've mentioned it somewhere, TK and the whole group was in the office, and Dan looks at it and he says, "Am I not getting that car?" I said, "No, you're not. You're getting one from the police station." And TK ran over and grabbed the box of Kleenex and gave it to him. It was just kind of funny. I got a bang out of that one.
Just a comment, at a recent LAZS meeting, we were talking about, we were looking at they were looking at the Great Plains Zoo and the staff that they've got down there. I mean, granted, a much bigger zoo, a lot more population, but relative in size to Watertown, we have such a bare bones staff here in Watertown compared to what the zoo in Sioux Falls has.
What I would like to do, though, is I would like to make a change in the zoo, and I would request that we put in a better camera system. And I don't know how much it costs, but, with all the kids going around there and things going on out there, we really don't have a camera system at the zoo. And I think for that type of a situation, we should have something.
Spencer, is that something you can help with?
Like a security type camera system? Is that what you're?
We have it at the aquatics area. We know what's going on there. We have cameras in many, many places, but at the zoo, where you've got 60,000 people coming in and out of that facility in a year's time, we really, if something were to happen, I think we need to have some video.
We have one of our newest security camera systems at the zoo. It could maybe get a few more cameras, but we do have one.
Yeah, because right now there's only one camera out in front that shows just a little bit as they walk into the place. We need to have a better system that can kind of look around that area.
I think we maybe need to add some cameras to it, but they are one of the places that have a newer NVR. So the big expense is kind of out of the.
So it's not a big deal for us to add that.
I don't think so. I think. Couple $300 a camera, and wiring. So
I think that would be very, very beneficial for us to do that. So maybe we should figure out how many cameras we need that, and then we can figure out where to get
Well,
dollars,
and,
but
and Jay, I
it
know
doesn't sound big.
they have like purchased two-way radios. They have $5,500 as the request. Maybe that, if we could look at that and maybe kind of split that, if you can, I mean, if there's certain radios that need to be replaced, replace those, and then maybe work on the cameras and put the two of them together.
I'll need to visit with Dan, 'cause
Right.
they definitely use the radios on a
Right,
regular
right. But if there's
basis,
some
too,
that
so-
are in a little better shape and put them off to
Yeah.
next year
Or
and
maybe
then
even,
work
maybe
with
even some of
Spencer.
yours that you're replacing, maybe some of them, are still in pretty good shape.
Right.
Yeah.
For at the aquatic centers, so.
And then you can work with Spencer
Maybe
on
work-
kind of that number and then see if you can make it work.
You bet.
Otherwise, you'll have to come back and let the mayor know and we'll have to do something
do that.
different.
So is the camera thing, is it just to have on record? Because it's certainly not something you're gonna monitor all the time, is it?
No,
I mean, you're not
think
gonna be
if-
able to
if
watch
some-
that.
I think it's just like any other thing. If something were to happen, we can go back and we can look and see what transpired. If there's accidents in the parking lot, if there, God forbid, something strange happened out there, we would know what's going on.
Or stolen. For example, Bruce, there's been accidents on Highway 212 out in front of the pool that police department, sheriff's office, DCI, they've all gotten it to try and figure out what happened.
Or if PETA frees the otters.
I would like to see inside and outside, absolutely.
One of the things we're working on in IT is we're trying to centralize on a brand of security cameras so that when the PD, or most likely the PD, when they have to look at something, it's one interface. They log into it and they see zoo, park, and boom, 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 all the way down, and it's all the same brand. It's one window, not 6 like it is currently. So we're trying to standardize on a camera system, and actually, new rec center would be under the same brand.
Community center.
Community center.
Okay. I like the idea, Spencer, I really do. So if you guys will run with that and get it figured out for me.
You suppose you might catch Mike swimming with the otters at night?
We don't need any cameras at hot yoga either. I don't
You
think.
can't,
And
Okay, I'm sorry to take that
Yeah.
another distance
yeah.
here.
Well, and the other thing with the security cameras too is just to help with the liability, because there have been a few accidents involving some people who were there, and it is nice to be able to go back to see what happened. Is there any liability on the city side? Is there not? And that gets used by Claims Associates, who is our insurance carrier too. So it does kind of help all the way around. It protects the people. It protects us. Just it's another layer that they've asked us to use.
part of today, that's all it is.
Well, you need a certain level of that. Did anybody else have any other questions on the zoo? Otherwise, we'll keep this moving. Next department is the Ice Arena Expo. There really is no changes here. As everybody knows, we're kind of looking towards that new facility. So this is just kind of getting us through another year. There is no capital purchases that are scheduled, and just a small salary adjustment. This is another one that the supervisor salary is split between 2 different departments, and then you have some part-time staff. Does anybody have any specific questions on the Ice Arena Expo building? I'm not really sure why we call it the Expo building. That'll change. Never mind. I digress. Okay, let's just move on to Parks System then.
Mayor, can we step back to the ice thing for just a second?
Sure.
We're into 17, and we know, obviously, by the end of 17, we're not going to have the ice ready, or we anticipate we wouldn't anyway. Are there anything major within that facility that is going to, I keep hearing it's so problematic in that the ice system, and are we good to go, barring a major problem, or?
I'll kind of elaborate on that, because we do have an issue right now. The pump or compressor out there is bad. And we are replacing that this year in 2016. I forget the dollar amount. Was it $21,000?
$13,000 range.
$13,000. We tried to see if we could buy a compressor that would work in the new facility, but they said it could not work. So I think we get that compressor done. My understanding is we'll be good to go through this year. I don't know if we'll be able to go through all of next year, but I think it's going to be really close.
So then, as soon as the new one opens, are we just going to abandon this, or are we going to let it go as long as it can?
Well, that's been a point of discussion, because do we continue on with 3 sheets of ice then, or do we have just 2 sheets of ice? Do we get the 3rd sheet out and just turn it into another field house? So it has been discussed, and I think that's something that we will have to talk about as a group. That's a good point, though, because I don't know.
It seems like a good open skate and stuff like that, where you can't fit that in, and I don't think it's going to be that much easier to fit it into the new facility, but if that was just the figure skating or the open skate for the people,
Right. One of the things, and I forget the name of that machine, Gambosi or something.
Olympia is
Zamboni.
what we have.
Gambosi, yeah. The Zamboni or whatever it is. The problem is if we keep the 3rd one open, then we're going to have to literally have another one for the other machine, for the other ice, and it's hard to carry them across because you don't want gravel and stuff on that. So it is kind of an issue there. So, and they're not cheap.
No.
They're like $100,000 is what they're expensive. Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Any other?
Zamboni. Okay.
See, I think that I like that name better than Olympia. Just saying. Just throwing it out there.
It's just 2 different brand names.
I know. And Terry Jorgensen did not like Zamboni. Is that Canadian?
Okay. Thanks, Shel.
All right. On the park system,
Really, I only had like one major change on the park systems. If you look down into the mower, the lawnmower, or the big mower they were looking at a Toro system. It was a $61,000 or $2,000 lawnmower. And what I did was kind of looked at the thing and said, well, why do we need a $60,000 mower? So Jay and I talked about it a little bit, and I called around. I talked to Titans, I talked to Hercus Implement, and I talked to Schoenemann's out at John Deere. John Deere did have a piece of equipment that was similar to this particular one here locally, and Hercus had another unit as a Kubota. And their Kubota is about $31,000 is what they told me, compares to $61,000. And the thing with the Kubota that you could do is you can hook on, and it was included in the price, a sweeper, or you could put a snowblower on it. So we could use it basically year-round rather than just in the summer months mowing out there. The only negative thing about it is that it is 1 foot narrower than what that Toro was. And I realized that when you're out there in all that big space, a foot probably adds up pretty fast. But it just seemed to me that we could buy this locally and get a really nice unit, whether we go to Hercus's or Titans or Schoenemann's, wherever. But I thought it was important that we did that. Any comments on that, you guys?
That's just for ball fielders in parks.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And the Kubota is a great name, that Hercus has. We would have to put it out for bids and see, but one of the nice things too, we were looking at the Toro, and it was looking at coming out of Colorado, I believe. And if we can get this right here in Watertown, if it breaks down, they're there to fix it immediately. We don't have issues like that. So whatever we can do on that, I'm pretty happy with that.
I got a question on the bike trail. How many years are we looking at? Obviously, that's not the first time that question's been asked.
To get around the lake, Glenn? Well, hopefully the Memorial Park project is finally going to be bid in August. And then the mayor and Shelley and I have talked about, what we want to do is put together an RFP and take that to some of the local engineering companies and have them put together a design to finish the rest of the trail system around the lake. And from there on, we can go and see what parts we would like to do as a city-funded project, or else what parts we would like to apply for grants for. You know, because some of the things, like when you get to wetland mitigation issues and that type of thing, if we can just do them as a city, it's going to be so much cleaner for us as we move forward. So that's kind of our goal.
Jay, how many miles do we have left to complete the lake, roughly?
You know, I measured that out last week, and I can't remember. I think it's like 3.5.
And what is it, a standard? I mean, I know it varies a lot with terrain, but what is it kind of a standard cost for a mile of bike trail?
I guess Shane is gone. I was going to ask him, but I think some of the last have been around $50 a foot.
I mean, if we can go by what we're budgeting 175,000 for 1,750 feet, which would be $100 a foot.
Well, actually, the 175,000 is kind of an annual appropriation, and the fund builds up.
Yeah, we usually have about $300,000 to $350,000 in there before we do a project. And just a note on the federal funding. My recommendation, if you ever want this trail done, is to just say thanks but no thanks to the federal funding, because the federal funding on just the Memorial Park has taken 4 years. You know, and so I don't care if you have wetland mitigation or not, you go at their pace, you go at you know, when they say go, and they've delayed this project 4 years. So you kind of almost have to just do it on your own and make a decision how you're going to appropriate the funding for it.
They have delayed, and if we make any kind of a change, they have to start their engineering
All over again.
And it just blows me
Shelley, do we
away.
have 700,000 in the bank then? If it's
No, I think it's right around that five something,
so.
560,
another-
570
Plus another 175 though.
next year.
What's the approximate cost of getting through Memorial Park, Jay?
Boy, I haven't looked at that file for so long. I don't know what that well, we'll find
Four-
out here in
Yeah,
a few weeks.
let's see.
in
I
a
thought
couple
they,
weeks.
I thought they were saying 4 something. Is
Yeah, I
that
think
kind
that's
of?
right.
It rings
I
a
think
bell,
one
yeah.
time it was 285.
No, it's bigger than that.
Yeah, it might be bigger than that. It's 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening if we don't do this. And we got the most dangerous part left, so we really need to. get that
And I
done.
think we have capable engineers upstairs that could actually engineer this for us, and we wouldn't have to be putting out a ton of money to the state for their engineering services.
Okay, is there any other questions about the park systems? Others will move on to city park and camping. On this one too, if you know, if you look, they're doing exceptionally well on revenues and keeping in line with their expenses. They've done a phenomenal job there. Doug does a really good job. The only thing that they have is for some, was it picnic tables or is it actually benches?
Benches along the boardwalk.
Okay, I thought that wasn't quite right. As far as capital, there really isn't a whole lot of changes in any other part of the budget. So if you guys have any questions, I can let you ask them.
One of the things that we forgot to actually add in there, if we have the funds available, is some of those little houses out there. You know, we talked about like you have at the state
Camping
parks.
cabins.
Camping cabins. It would be nice to maybe start putting in one here or one there and do a couple here and there. I think they'd be rented. I think people would really enjoy them. Not everybody has a camper, and they'd still like to be at the lake.
Mayor, in regards to little houses, we have the park manager stays out there, and I know, and historically that's been there, and have we ever sat down and reconsidered our need for that scenario? number one, we got the house, but number two, I think Doug has done a wonderful job out there, been a number of times, and the people that I talk to out there when I'm out there think he does a great job. But I can see where that's a never-ending job if you live on site at the same time. I don't know, do all parks have somebody there that's living on site?
Lots of times they have a park manager, park host, that were somebody in a
And the thing is,
camper will stay.
We have a park host, plus our manager out there.
Right.
I agree. I mean,
we
it's a
could-
job where this guy never can get away.
He can't get away. I feel so sorry for the guy, and I believe he's got a family too that's out there with
does.
him, and it's like, goodness sakes, this is not, this
And
is
we
a
have,
sentence more than a job, and
Doug is actually now presently looking for another house, and he
We've
plans
been-
to relocate.
We've been
should we
discussing
get that, could we sell that house and get it out of there and
think
open
so.
up that space for additional camping areas, or, and move it off
think
and
we should-
put
we
that
should.
money
Or-
towards these other little
Or like,
cabins you like?
you probably have to build a little bit of an office space, because I think, part of what he uses that is,
Or could you turn that into your cabins?
Could you run it like a reunion
Rental
house or
cabins.
where-
It would be a lodge.
Right.
I will tell you that there's one up at Wiley Park, and they rent that house all the time up there. So, good idea to,
That is an idea that, John, and talking about a lodge, maybe that's something we should do. $10 a night.
Pardon me?
I was gonna rent it the first couple of weeks. Maybe all of July.
I would say a place like that would start in the neighborhood of $175 to $200 a night, my experience.
it would help us get somebody out there and give the poor individual a break from their job. It's never ending.
Yeah, because right now he works there, all summer long and has no time off. And then after, during the winter, then he's at the ice arena.
And then
that's
they
a
turn the
lot.
lights on for Winter Wonderland and keep them awake.
Yeah. Right now, the house is considered one of the perks. Would there be some kind of offsetting wage or something?
It would
to-
have to be, yeah, his
And,
wages would.
well, and it really isn't. I mean, we basically, to get it on his W-2, we add it and then we subtract it. So it doesn't hurt him. He just basically pays taxes on it because it's considered a fringe benefit. So his wage wouldn't change. We wouldn't add it and subtract it out of
I
his
think
pay.
maybe, would we need to take a look at that maybe and see what it would take to, by next season, to be able to utilize that in a different manner than we do today, and maybe do a little bit of, might have to do a little remodel money into it, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't think it'd be much.
'Cause I think we're actually pretty close at doing that now.
Yes, Doug is looking
Yeah.
for other living quarters.
Right. Well, you gotta turn your microphone on there when you say these things.
I just said we'd hate to kick him out before he actually finds another place to live, so. Yeah, I would feel bad. Sorry. Is there any other questions anybody has on City Park or? Okay. We'll kind of move to cemetery, which is one of the departments in the general fund, but falls under the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department for some odd reason. Again, not a whole lot of change here. They're another one that they do a really good job with the revenues that they do bring in. They keep their expenditures pretty steady.
This is another one where they're getting a new lawnmower and then the existing mower is going to the fire department for them to use.
Yep.
Jay, what's our weed control program out there? Because, I brought something up to you earlier this year, and do we have a regular program out there?
Just the program that Tom and his staff participate in, but that is the ag and hort supply line item that we added some money to try and get some more chemicals so we can be doing applications out there.
Okay, so there's a regular program that we got in
Right.
place out there, okay?
Who is our manager of our cemetery?
Tom Weeks.
Okay, I want to compliment those people out there, because I go by there all the time, and by golly, I think that's the place I want to get buried when it's my time, because I think they do I think they do a great job out there, I really do. It's a very well maintained, and I think it's, if I go back in time, maybe 20 years or so, it's way better today, so I commend those people, it's very nice.
I will certainly share that with the staff.
That, if you remember, if you go back just a few years, I remember when Brenda removed the fence at the cemetery, and she really got slammed for doing that. I think it was a really good thing to do. It cleaned up the cemetery, and I wish we could get Mount Hope to do the same thing, or some kind of St. Mary's, I'm sorry, get St. Mary's to do that, you know, because you got that gray rusty fence as you come into town, and it does fill with garbage, but it would be really nice, and I have had discussion with some of them, they just, I don't know.
Mayor, I have two as well. That happens to be, a Catholic cemetery, and so it's the churches that I go to. And I have had discussions with them, because I think it is unsightly as far as I'm concerned. But I think one of the biggest things they're concerned with is all that trash, and it's a lot, that stacks up against the fence. If the fence isn't there, it's in the cemetery. And that's really the primary reason why the fence is there, is to stop the garbage.
Then they should have someone collecting that.
It's coming from the highway.
Yeah. Is that their property or is it the boulevard?
I'm not really sure, if that's in the right of way or where it is, but I just thought I'd throw it out. It would certainly be nice to see that maybe gone, or construct a different type of a fence, yeah.
So by that logic, if garbage goes on your land, you don't get rid of it?
No, but they don't have to take their fence down.
Yeah.
It's their fence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but they should keep it clean.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the one comment I'll make is,
Yeah,
I think
I
the
understand they don't want it
equipment
in there.
replacement plan, we kind of split that out last year, where we kind of did the construction projects on a different worksheet and the equipment. I think it's shown the benefit, because we've had more switcheroos of, you need a vehicle, I'm getting rid of a vehicle, and you decide who needs the new vehicle, who can use the used vehicle. And when you kind of see that replacement plan, and you see, well, in a couple of years you've got it, so let's just move this out. And if you're looking for it, or you're getting rid of a dump truck and you're looking for one, I think that's really what that's for. It's to put things out, and the mayor and the department heads can really look at that, and you can utilize and share. And, we save mowers, we save vehicles, we save equipment that one department wears out and another department doesn't use quite as often. And I commend the mayor and the department heads for using that tool and looking how to save and share resources and kind of spread that around. So, I think it's working, and thanks to, you guys as a mayor and the council for doing that and looking at that and taking that time to have that long-term plan out there. And I think it's working. So thank you guys, because that sure helps me in this process, and it helps department heads too, so.
This is my 6th budget, and this is the fewest mowers I've ever had on a budget.
And pickups, I think.
It's so thank you guys very
See?
much.
Well, like I said, it's working, and I think it's a good thing, and it's a good thing for the city, it's a good thing for taxpayers, and I appreciate that. The next one we'll go to is forestry. And again, not a whole lot. The only capital is chainsaw, and it's pretty hard to have forestry without chainsaws. So that's important. And then just the salary increases.
I'd like to mention too that on that, last year we were able to buy that, I want to call it a cherry picker from the utilities. That has paid for itself over and over.
Over and over. It's
$10,000
incredible.
or $11,000.
$11,000, yeah.
Yeah, that was very good that they offered that to us, and very, very good.
Yep.
Well,
Turn-
just in
turn
what
your block.
Shelley was saying, the utilities we're gonna get another unit for the golf course too, and he's gonna have a dump box, and that's what we're just gonna get, so municipal utilities falls right into that too.
Yeah, and I think that's that whole partnership when we brought them into the department head meetings and the budgeting and that whole planning process. They've been really good to let us know when they're getting rid of equipment and sharing that and helping that out. And again, they are part of the city. They're just you know, a little bit off to the side, and so sometimes, you know, we don't see that partnership, but it's been great on both sides, I think.
That truck, that cherry picker you're talking about, Junior Block told me one day, he cut down 34 trees he didn't think he could have cut down with the previous equipment, and he said it would have been $1,100 to $1,500 a tree to cut them down, that he could cut down with this new cherry picker. So talk about saving.
Return on investment was
Right,
pretty good, huh?
Saved it. 3 times it's paid for itself, and it's the first year. And they've got another 24 to cut down out there yet. I don't know if they'll get them done this summer, but, so,
Yep.
5 times the money back probably in 1 year.
Yep. And as a taxpayer, you know, they should be proud of that, you know, that's something that has saved everybody money, so that's a good thing. Does anybody have any other questions on the forestry? Okay.
Mayor, are we going to be budgeting anything? We talked once earlier this summer about the establishment of a tree farm, citywide tree farm.
I think we did, didn't we,
28
Jay? Didn't we do have?
2018.
2018. It wasn't very much, was it, Shel?
$20,000 in the parks.
I mean, I'd hate to see us lose a year. We probably should,
It probably
But-
wouldn't even hurt though to, you know, even if it was, the money was into 18 for the trees, if we would determine a location and get that turned over and fallow it for a year before we do the tree planting would probably be valuable.
Well, and we need to get water to it, but all of it, just so everybody that knows what we're talking about as to why we're talking about this, we really have 2 things. As Dan mentioned, we have a very high number of trees out at the municipal golf course that we have already removed, I think 34 or 5, just between last fall and this summer, and there's quite a number of others that either need to be trimmed up or a number of them have to be removed yet, and they're typically the old cottonwoods. But as we look throughout the city, there's a number of places, and we also know that the emerald ash borer is over into Nebraska and into kind of eastern central Minnesota. So there's going to be a day, it's not a matter of if it gets here, it's a matter of when it gets here, and this town is loaded with ash trees. And what we said is, you know, what do? It's kind of like, you know, 45, 50 years ago when the Dutch elm disease came through. I think we need to be starting to prepare ourselves for rejuvenating our trees. And best time to do that is now, so they got some growth under them and start implementing some of those trees.
Yeah, and
So
I
that's the
also-
purpose of what we talked about,
Yeah.
both the golf course, other parks areas, as well as throughout the community, so.
yeah. And we also looked at maybe a spade, you know, getting a spade that we could do
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff ourselves. And it would be very, very positive for us to do that.
Does anybody gotta consider the location, and what are you thinking?
We have had some locations that we talked about. We talked about out there by Derby Downs, kind of to the north side by the airport, some of that ground area. I don't know if we have water there, though. I would, yeah, I think it would be easy to get, or even in Derby Downs area. But, you know, you could plant trees, and we could be moving trees in and out of there every given year, and we really should have our own little tree farm. So let's do that. Let's find that location. Let's make sure we can get water over there. And I think that's a good idea, to get that tilled up so that we got, you know, the ground ready to go.
So we're gonna leave the money out at 17?
I think you know, we could probably, I think we could find $10,000-$15,000 to put into that tree fund and put that into 17. I think it's important that we do it.
Do you want to just wait and see if you need it, or, I mean, are you going to get it tilled up and ready to go yet this year in order
Yeah,
to
Jay,
plant
you can
trees
do
next
that.
year's, or?
I just think, my gut
Let's
feel
do
is
it.
that I don't see any benefit of tilling it and leaving it set. I think you're gonna till and be ready to plant. You
And the
know,
best time to plant them, I believe now, is in the fall.
right.
Yeah, so let's do it.
Spring and fall.
Let's, you guys okay with that? So would you need a motion, a second to
Okay.
move,
What number
Okay,
you wanna put
right
in
now
there?
it's in 2018 in the Parks Department within Park and Rec. So do you want that to be moved up? You're gonna,
into 17? And Parks we can leave it under Parks. Just
well,
the
I
tree
just, I
service,
figured
yeah.
since, you know, the Parks Department is kind of
They're gonna be
with the
doing it.
forestry and, you know,
Right.
Okay,
Okay, so I'll need a motion. and a
How much
second.
was the number?
20,000.
20,000.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to move that into 17.
So I have a motion by Mike to move the tree numbers into 17,
Who
second by
seconded?
John. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And we will have the ability to not only use that for trees, but also for irrigation and preparation and that type of thing with that money, correct?
Can we make a loan from you, Shelley, so that we could put it in yet this year and then borrow the money from you and then pay it off in 17 when it hits the budget? Okay, let's do that.
Okay. I got about
What's
20
that
bucks you want a
interest-
loan?
What's that interest rate? That's, I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
like-
about 12%.
Okay. You guys see what I'm dealing with? No.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for Jay before we let him go and enjoy the rest of his evening?
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you so much.
It
Thanks,
went well,
Jay.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna go through these relatively quickly. They're kind of some of those things that are more information only, or if you have any specific questions about what we're doing, why we're doing it, the amount we're doing it at. The first one is a contingency account. As long as I've been here, we've had this. It's fluctuated. In the last few years, we've had $300,000. Some years when we have like a bad snow, or snow is really what's kind of eaten it up in the past. We've been lucky in the last couple of years. We've had a few things that have come before you that we've used contingency, but not very much. But it's still something that's nice to have. If it doesn't get used, it just goes right back into the fund balance and.
So
and
that
kinda-
was my question. We don't carry that over, right? We
No,
just
we do not.
reset every year, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Shelley, do you know if we go back, I don't know how many years, but if we go back 10 years, how much of that have we historically used each year? I mean, is it a minor part of it? Is it
Very, very minor. I know we had a couple really bad snow years, and we used all of it. I know we used $500,000 one year, because I think our snow budget actually ended up being almost $900,000. And then another year we used all $300,000, and then since then we've used less than $50,000 for 14, 15. I don't anticipate using hardly any. I think we've had the 20,000 for the PD, and I don't anticipate using any additional for that.
And it really is, it is really important to understand that it's there for a reason. If something comes up that we didn't budget for and that we need, this is where we're able to get those. Just like if we're going to look at this weir, that's probably where we're going to have to use the dollars from, is out of the contingency.
Or was there some limits on what that amount can be?
Nope. No, you have the 300,000, and it's up to the governing body to determine where that goes.
just within, it's not by
So-
ordinance, it's within the budgeting process, correct?
Right, yep, you can't have more than 5%,
Yeah, that's
which
what
is
I'm- that's what I
pretty
was
high.
asking.
But I've never seen it more than 500,000 is the highest we've ever had it. Yep. So, the next one is, the finance office. And, the biggest changes we have is every odd year, we have an election. And, so next year being an odd year is no different. We're gonna have an election for the mayor and the 5 city council members. So we have to have the election judges, election supplies, banking services. The finance office picks up some general banking service fees instead of farming them out. And so those have taken a little bit of an increase, we've noticed, so that's why we're doing that. Consulting services, every other year, GASB, which is a government accounting standard board, requires the city to have an actuary come in and assess for our other post-employment benefits, which is what OPEB is. And so that's why every other year they charge us about $8,000. We split that in half with the utilities. And that's going to be coming up. They're doing the information now, and then they'll bill us in January. So every other year that comes off. And then our normal salary.
Shelley,
Go
how
ahead.
did the 2015 audit go? I mean, I know there's always been some concerns about the timeliness of it. Was it
Yep.
better this year?
It always it always starts out good, but we kind of finished that just in the nick of time. The biggest hiccup that we had this year was the GASB 68, which is in their infinite wisdom decided that the city should show their portion of the retirement system, which is completely controlled by the state. And so that is a huge undertaking, and it had more formulas than you could even look at. And it was just a really kind of implementation, a little bit of a nightmare. So that took a long time to go through and make sure it worked and put things where they needed to go. And we got some extra help from the state, so that slowed things down by a couple, 3 weeks. We keep hoping that to fine tune it and you know.
Just to comment again, because I can relate a little bit to what goes into it, but the award that we have gotten, how many years in a row have you got, has this office gotten it, Shelley?
For the CAFR, probably 30.
Yeah, I mean, what goes into producing that thing? I mean, kudos to you and your staff for turning that out and then getting recognized or getting the award that we do after the fact.
Yeah, it's a process. There's a lot of man hours that go into that, and then 3 months of the auditor. So yep, but it's worth it in the end because it puts out a really good product for the community. It also helps with our bond rating. So it's all good. Does anybody have any questions for me on?
What in the finance office has got credit card fees associated with it?
Oh, we have a credit card machine, and we take payments. We take utility payments. We take ambulance payments, garbage cans. Also, just our third-party processor has, you pay $9.50 per machine.
Yeah.
You also have the fees of Visa, MasterCard, the whatever 1.7% that they charge. And then also the banking services, we pay $975 a month to have our Great Western account, and that all comes out of the finance office.
Okay, I was just thinking, credit card, if somebody's paying a bill that they have, if you come into my place and pay and you've charged, you get to charge a fee to use a credit card.
No, we don't have that.
I know the county don't hesitate.
Yeah, and
We're
I
getting-
think the utilities, they kind of do theirs through a third party, and you have to go in there and go on their computer system. But when this was set up, it was determined that we
How
would
does
not
that
charge
work
any
if we-
additional fees.
If we're collecting it for the utilities, but then we're eating the,
We are.
I
Say,
don't
Yep.
agree with that.
Well, I would throw this at you, just so you understand. When we're taking over the zoo operations and we're doing the memberships and everything, we are going to have tax plus. Because, I mean, if you're charging $6 and all of a sudden you're taking 6% or 4% and giving it to the state, you're not really getting what
And-
you want.
and shouldn't
So
that-
it's gonna be the cost plus tax.
Shouldn't that be the same across the board, golf course and all?
I think the golf course charges tax on
Or
everything.
the tax, but how about the credit card fees? I see a write-off.
I
on
don't
that.
know, the credit card fees,
No,
we
every,
don't do
no,
that.
no city department
That- yeah,
passes
that-
on credit card
The golf course
fees.
is through Levi, but I understand what you're saying, like if we take a Visa and they're charging us 3%, and then we're losing 6% on the taxes or 4%.
Yeah, so.
Well, the tax
it's-
part I understand completely, is, that should be added on if,
Yeah.
no
And
matter
that's
what,
something the
but-
finance office does now. I mean, we don't lose money on tax, we
Yeah,
add
but
it,
the-
but is,
But we do in other facilities.
There
like
are-
Park and
yep.
Rec charges, they don't
Right,
charge
they back
tax
into
on
tax.
that stuff,
So-
so we need to do that.
So I guess, does the utilities take a credit card if somebody comes over there and takes?
no,
it?
they do not.
So why are we taking a credit card for you? I mean, if I'm the kind of guy that wants to pay my utilities, the utilities won't take it, I'm gonna come to the city, and basically the city's gonna eat the difference. It seems kind of dumb to me, quite honestly.
And I think that's a policy that you can look at and see if you
Yeah,
want to.
we can, and
continue.
it's really kind of up to you guys, because
Yeah.
it's, you guys are gonna hear the complaints if we say, I'm sorry, we can take.
But if the
we can
utilities won't take it,
but-
why the heck are we?
Well, because they have their online, you can go into their office and you can go onto a computer and you can pay online and use a credit card. And then they have a flat fee charge to it. They just don't actually swipe a credit card. So that's the way that
So they
they
are
can
getting their fee.
Right.
So we should be getting that.
Right, and I don't, there's no good way to do that when you swipe it. I mean, you actually have to physically add it to it. And that's a policy that you guys can give me a directive to do. But when it was set up, Tracy was here, and I don't know if it was through the mayor at that time, whether the entire council decided that, but when they were all set up, the determination was made that the city would absorb the costs of that service. And so
And I
if you
guess
want to change that.
relevance to this is, I don't know how many dollars we're talking about. I mean, if it's pennies, it's one thing, but if it's a lot of dollars, because when you take a card, you have no idea what the fees are on that card, because they can be 1 3/4 or 3% of the, you know, if a lot of these cards that get their points, there's some pretty steep charges on them.
I think that we need to continue to take credit cards, but you know, if I had the credit card machine, this kind of thing, I would just automatically build that into my budget and my cost. You know what I'm saying? So that it's, we know we're going to have to pay it, but we're going to charge to recollect it. Do you know what I'm saying? Just make it.
Well,
it's
my
no
my
different
opinion
than-
on that, though, is a credit card for a cash transaction that was taken right now, but when you've charged and you got it, and you're making it as a payment on something that's charged, it's already been carried already, and now you're having another fee that's added on, and I don't agree with that.
Shelley, can we get a handle on what kind of dollars and that we are talking about as far as what we're collecting for the utilities department?
How many people come in and pay their utility bill here?
Yeah.
More than you think.
And why do we?
Well, no, and I can't say, you know, most of them are elderly people who live in the uptown area. Most of them will pay with cash, and that's why they come in is you know, they hand you a wad of cash and they want a receipt. They want to know that that's been taken. But there are a few. We get a lot of ambulance bills paid with credit cards. We get a lot of people who come and order garbage containers, recycling containers that want to pay with a debit card. You know, I mean.
And that's a little different. That's a cash transaction like you would at any other business to some extent, but.
Mm-hmm.
Do we use the same for building permits? Can you use a credit card for building permits?
Yes, and that's taken upstairs. They have a machine upstairs as well.
It'd be the same thing to me at a concession stand. You wouldn't add on a percentage, but when we're collecting it for the utilities, and we're not, we're eating the difference in there, that doesn't make any sense to me.
And I think, you know, listening to Glenn, I think that's the exact same thing that he's thinking. And I'm thinking like you guys, that, you know, we shouldn't be eating 3% of the utility bills.
We're already eating a service by just collecting the money for them, quite honestly. I mean, that's staff time we're not getting any reimbursement for. On the opposite side, we get to pay for the water meters.
Okay, well.
Well,
I didn't say nothing.
Let's be honest. I mean, why is it a one-way deal here? Let's make it a two-way thing, if that's the case.
Okay. Well, we can sure look into that.
I think we
you
need
know,
to, Shelley. Let's find out
yeah.
kind of from Sarah how many people are
sure.
actually paying with credit card and
Sure.
and what's going on. Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on finance office? On the city hall budget, not much change on that one. The building maintenance went up just a little bit. There seems to be just a few more things that tend to go wrong, need to be fixed. Our heating and cooling has had some hiccups. We have continuous leak issues with the roof that we bring people in. We had a drainage issue that we've been trying to get a handle on. We've replaced part of the roof. We've changed the ventilation system so that we don't get a sewer smell as bad in here. So different things like that, just trying to keep up. We had some elevator issues that we had to have them in a couple different times for some, and sometimes that maintenance isn't covered under a maintenance contract. So just, you know, dealing with some of those issues. And with kind of a tight budget, you don't really have a whole lot of give and take there. So Any questions on the City Hall?
Don't we pay quite a bit for that maintenance contract, don't we?
For the heating and cooling,
Yeah.
we pay, it's about $5,600 a year. And that gives us 15 hours, and they come 3 times to check when the heat comes on, when the cooling comes on, and then one more time during the year. But if there's any parts that they have to replace, which seem to have been happening more lately, we have to pay for the parts, and then they'll come in and do it. Any other questions? Okay, on the street lighting, that's basically given to us by the utilities. They kind of have this whole page worth of formulas, and based on the increases that they anticipate they're going to see. And so they let us know that based on that formula to budget the $515,600 for street lighting for 2017. And on the transfers out to other funds, you've been seeing this on the revenue side. As you can see, Park and Rec didn't change, Airport, Upper Big Sioux. We already talked about the E911 increasing the $50,000 to kind of help with their negative cash balance. We are not anticipating the community center, needing any transfer because they're not asking for any capital because that'll all be new with the new facility. And then the event center transfer out corresponds with that $50,000 expense for maintenance. On the casualty reserve fund, this is a fund that's allowed to be set up by state statute. It can't have more than $100,000 in it. And it's basically for any unanticipated expenses where you have an insurance claim and you're going to get some reimbursement. We usually use it for general fund departments that have a harder time coming up with a $10,000 deductible, or if it only costs $3,000-$4,000, some of those smaller budgets can't handle that. So it does get used from time to time, and with our interest rates being as bad as they are, it has taken an extremely long time to get any money put back in there. So it isn't used very often, and it all has to go through the finance office for anything to be expended out of there. Under the Urban Renewal Fund, it is again anticipated that there is not going to be an assessment done for the downtown businesses, and just fund balance is going to be used. We've kind of really minimized the costs that are coming out, really the cleaning service. The music costs about $35 a month to have the music up there. The maintenance is really for the volunteer center, restrooms, that type of thing, and then the flowers. So,
Does anybody know on the music, is there still a lot of problems with speakers and stuff up there? It seems like half of them work and half of them
I don't know. Randy, Beth, have you guys seen, heard anything?
Is Makepeace still in charge of that, or who's?
I don't know if anybody in charge of it, actually.
Well, you pay a fee, but I
Mid-Continent.
think they're the ones that, at least that gets somehow switched out of their place, so they get control of what music plays or something, so.
I thought that they did it the same way with everything else at the volunteer center.
But I know when they redid the streets up there, there was a bunch of the speakers on the poles that didn't work, but it was no easy way to fix them because it's all underground and there's some problems with some of that stuff, so there's some dead spots along there.
Oh,
Do we have, is there anybody working on grant things for this?
I think right now they're just rolling out ideas. They're still taking some of the recommendations. Taking the recommendations from the charrette, looking at the potential, working with the community foundation, potential funding, all those kind of things. I think that's all being formulated right now, and so I think think the charrette was the springboard, and I think now that we'll see some of those things coming down the line. I don't know for Randy, but I don't see anything for 2017 right now.
If I may, Glenn, I did have a chance to visit with a Chamber of Commerce member up in, what? Oh, Glenn, I'm looking at Bill. It's getting kind of late here. So anyhow, hey, you down there Bill, I was visiting with somebody, Chamber of Commerce out of Grand Forks, and they literally do have one person that's all they do is grant writing, and they're very successful in it. And I think we really do need to still continue to look at that and try to get some more grants for downtown.
Yeah, that takes somebody that knows what they're doing, and they got to be persistent and work at it, so.
We used to have the Peace and Justice Center downtown. There was a person there that we used to do a lot of that through.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I was just saying, is there a firm or somebody, if we didn't hire a person?
I think
is
we
there
could
somebody that
actually
could-
probably
First
use
District.
First District.
Yeah,
And
First
I've asked,
They're good at it.
I've asked Todd a little bit about some grants,
Yeah.
you know, try to keep his eye open for some grants for downtown
Right.
projects. And right now,
The biggest-
nothing that he,
Right. The biggest thing with grants is that you have to have a plan to go get the grant.
Yep. Right.
And so a couple times, when we've talked to them about grants, it's like, well, bring us the plan and we'll work the grant. So we got to get
Yeah.
the cart and the horse in
So-
the right direction.
You just have to look at the grants that are out there, is what you're saying, and then come up with a plan.
Right. You find the grant you like and draw the plan to the grant. I get it.
Is there any other questions on the urban renewal? I'm going to go really quick through the TIF districts. This is basically the second penny has loaned money to these different TIF districts, and then they have a 7% interest rate. The increment financing comes back to the city. One good way to see if the TIF is paying for itself is if you look at the amount of revenue coming through and you look at the amount of interest being paid. If the revenue exceeds the interest, we're doing well, and the TIF fund is being paid down. If that's in the opposite direction, we're actually adding more than what we're paying off, and so those TIF districts have not developed. That increment financing hasn't developed to the level of what our infrastructure costs are. The one thing, so like TIF 1 is doing well. TIF 2 is getting there, but it's not yet paying for itself. TIF 3 is one that in 2017, it will get paid off, and there is actually an excess that we're going to get. And I kind of had some conversations that's why this changed. I was hoping that we could only ask for what we needed, and per the state, nope. You got to get the entire increment, and then Justin will have to work at a document that you guys will have to approve to dissolve that TIF, and then any money left over goes back to the county, and then they disperse it. So it's kind of a kerfuffled process, but that's the way it's going to work. So this is the first TIF fund that we've had that's paid for itself.
Can't have the good one roll over and help the bad one out, huh?
Yeah, they say no. So kind of rain on your parade there a little bit. And then TIF 5 and TIF 6 are not there yet either. Or I guess TIF 6 is, but TIF 5, that's Willow Creek Drive, and we're really hoping that we're on the right path here. And that's where, because it takes 5 years for a new business to pay 100% of their property taxes because of the formula that the county has. So the sooner you can get development going, the sooner you can see that tax ramification realized. So,
Shelley, are these typically
happy.
20-year? Is that typically?
We structure them that way. You have 5 years to spend the money, and then you have 15 years after your last expenditure to collect the money. So we always make sure, we always have an administrative fee. We always make sure that administrative fee is paid on that 5th year so that we have 15 years to collect. So yes, in the end, you potentially have 20 years to collect that TIF.
The Willow Creek one's already how many years in?
That one was 2009. So we're getting in that 7, 8
If
years.
it takes 5 years before we start seeing full.
Right,
it's-
right.
We're gonna be,
Yep, and if you get to the end of that collection period, the TIF gets dissolved, and then, we just won't continue to collect that. So that's kind of the TIFs in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions, you can sure ask. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. The GO bond fund, basically, we're told that we need to assess 105% of what the amount of our payment is for that year, so that's what we do. On the last year of the payment, we need to use any fund balance we have to pay for that bond payment. So with the refunding that we've done, in the calculations that I did just roughly, we should be able to have enough fund balance to pay for the entire last payment and not assess that to the taxpayers, because that's the only thing it can be used for anyway. So I think that was a good thing that was done. It gets to be a lot of work, kind of a paper nightmare, but I think for the taxpayers, it'll keep that property tax assessment off. So it'll be 19 years versus 20 years. But that's basically, you look at your amortization schedule, you take it by 105%, and that's your tax levy, and you run with it. So capital projects fund, this one was a tough one because there's just sure a whole lot of things up in the air right at this point. There's, of course, nothing anticipated as far as expenditures because anything that we've already budgeted for what we anticipated the entire project, so those monies will just keep rolling over. We've gotten all of the bond proceeds that we're going to have, and so basically now it would be any private funding. And so, kind of estimated what maybe some of that private funding would be. Don't really know. But that's kind of where we are with that. We'll keep this capital projects fund open until 100% of the bond proceeds are spent or until all three of the projects are done. And that will be up to you as a council whether you want to continue to have this open. And if there is any private funding that comes out, you would want to keep this capital projects fund open even to just keep track of that. So that's where we are with that one. Does anybody have any questions, concerns about anything that I just went over really quick? Okay. Is there anything, because this is kind of the end, was there anything that anybody had, any concerns, anything that you wanted to see changed, anything you wanted to see reconsidered, other than the three things that you've already voted on?
I'd like to bring back this is one of those you snooze, you lose. I missed it. We went so fast yesterday. Back to the contributions to external organizations. This is kind of one of those things, too, for me, where it's a matter of my word. When we met with all the organizations, and I had checked with Steve about this a little bit, we knew that there probably wouldn't be a lot of increases because we had asked the department heads to keep their budgets tight and things like that. So what we told them was that there would possibly not be any increases, but there would be no cuts. And so we have one, and it's the $3,000 on the dive rescue team. And I don't want to be... Did you talk to them, Steve? Is that something that was okay? I mean,
No,
I guess that would be going back on our word. But I think I know that we've made some changes, so.
And I'm sorry, Beth, I hate to disagree with you, but I don't think that the group that was there was to give them your word that nothing would change.
I understand that.
I think what you were there and asked to do was to listen to them and to visit with them. But we did look at that, and we stressed over that, and it just felt like at this particular time, the need was greater in another area than what we were doing. And that's why I did make that change. And I don't know if the council agrees with it or not, but this is your opportunity to weigh in on Beth's
I guess beyond the
question.
word, I think that's maybe not the point. It was something, I don't know, did you remember that? I'm not really sure how we did that. I'm going to refer to my other coworkers. I realize that we added some things to here, so that has to be obviously made up. I mean, so I'm not unrealistic about this. As I look at these things, one of the things we did was we looked at return on investment. And I know there's also been concern about, well, where do they have money for this and where do they have money for that? So I asked about for them to give me some more information, for example, on the newer boat that they had. And they said that it was a combination of 6 years of their raffle and private donations for them to get that. And the $18,000 that they ask for is entirely dedicated to their fuel and maintenance and vehicle budget. And outside of the money that they set aside and save for those big, the different things, they've been using a boat from Game Fish and Parks now as a hand-me-down for quite some time. Their budget is fairly lean. They get the money from the county, they get the money from us, and then they have the MOIs with the different communities around that. And so, I feel weird pushing because obviously my husband's on the team, but I also know that this is $18,000 is not very much to pay if it saves one life, I guess. And I feel the same way about the Beacon Center. $10,000 is not to pay if it saves one life. And so that was just one of those things that I wanted to bring back. So
I was a little surprised on it because the Beacon Center has just started. 2 years ago is the first year that they came in with any request at all. They came in asking for $5,000. We ended up giving them $6,000 because they had some software. This year they came in and asked for $7,000 and they got $10,000. So I was surprised to see that and should have said something last night also, that it was given $10,000, but we thought it was, their request was actually $7,000 to us. And so we weren't opposed to the $10,000 because they have they have some air conditioning needs or something. So we weren't opposed to it. But maybe if we'd known, I think at least two of us, I don't know where Glenn is on this, but I think at least two of us would maybe not have wanted to go with the 10 if we thought we were going to take it from someplace else. I guess we were saying if you want to go to 10, then it would come from someplace else, some money.
My comment as a third member of that group is I'm all in favor of the Beacon Center amount, but I share some of Beth's concern too, that we did in effect say that not to expect a decrease, or almost promise it would not be decreased, and so it puts us in a bad light by cutting the organization by $3,000 now. And I guess if that be the case, I would make a motion that we restore the $3,000 to the dive rescue or whatever the organization is, back to the, $18,000 or whatever the previous amount was.
Right there. I think you're one up too high. Can you go down? You had it there, I think. There you go. I had that they actually had requested $12,000. If you see that under the Beacon Center or a resource center, they actually had requested 12 on that is what we were.
It says 10 right here. Where is it?
That's my proposal of 10. They requested 12.
But my motion has to do with the dive rescue team, though, restoring that to the 18,000.
And then reduce the Beacon Center back down to
No,
the 6 or 7?
No, I was not. That's not part of my
So,
motion.
because this is one of the things, I mean, we do have a motion on the floor by Glenn and second by Beth, is that correct? Okay, now I will open it up for discussion because I do think there's been many, many years, and Don, you were there last year. You said this is a slope that we really don't want to get into because at what point in time do you continue to choose, and who's good, who's bad? I'm not saying any one of these are better than the others, but I will say, and forgive me for saying this, but I look at Dive Rescue at the National Night Out, and there was 2 brand new trucks sitting there. There's a huge truck that was donated to them. There's a brand new boat sitting over there. It's kind of like, at what point in time do we continue funding to the extent we do? I mean, I would love to drive a brand new truck, and I'd love to have a brand new Boston Whaler boat that I can, and I understand they're out there rescuing and things, but I don't know. What are you guys thinking about this? 'Cause I know that we do have 3 here that are wanting to restore it.
Well, I'm a bit along the line. I certainly understand and appreciate the value that they bring into the community and our surrounding area. But with every one of those pieces of equipment that they either buy or acquire in any manner, even if it's given to them, it increases their operational side of their business or of their organization. And I think that's what they got to be careful of. Is I will tell you that there is a perception even within the community of that.
Very much so.
That it's and I hate to say this, but that's what you hear is they just keep buying man toys, and I think that the danger is that, I think, Beth, you said that they go out and fundraise for the big pieces and they use our money for their operations. Well, let's be honest, it all goes into the same kitty. The operations goes up every time they get a piece of equipment, because it happens to us as well.
Well, they also get rid of equipment, like they've given back now the boats and things that they had. I agreed with you, and so that's why I went and dug a little further as to how do they how long does it take them to buy a piece of equipment? What do they do with it, and that type of thing. I guess now this will be just a personal comment, is that I totally understand that they've reduced the amount of money they've asked for. In the past, they used to ask for 24, and they've actually reduced it down to 18, which has stayed steady now for the last several years, certainly since I've been on the council. The thing with equipment is that if you've got volunteers going out at 1 o'clock in the morning and risking their time and life and whatever to go help save someone else, I would rather have them go into a decent piece of equipment than something that they got, that Game Fish and Parks gave them 15 years ago. I mean, that's my personal side of it. Now, turn it around, put my council hat back on, I certainly am aware of what people say as well. But they do a lot of community stuff. They're doing Rumble on the Ranch and making sure that that's all safe and taken care of. They just got done doing the triathlon down at Lake Cochrane. And they actually had a MOI for that, so they were reimbursed for their costs. So I was trying to balancing it out with the amount contributed with what we get back in return and what they do for the community. So that's my pitch on that.
Every piece of equipment that they have, now you take that big truck, a lot of people think that's a big boy toy. But if you looked at the asset that gives to the city, I mean, if you were ever at a big fire scene and see what they do with that piece of equipment, if there's ever a crime scene, they bring that big piece of equipment out and it's used for a headquarters. Every piece of equipment they've got that they've worked hard for is used throughout the city by police department, fire department, everything. I'm not for or against how much money we give them. I'm not saying that we should give it back, the $3,000 back to it. All I know is when we start talking about equipment, and some of the perception that the public has is totally wrong.
Just go back to the Sun Chase fire when they used that to fill the tanks and didn't have to run back to the fire department to fill them, and then they were able to get water and other materials out and equipment out to the firefighters. So I was thinking about those things when we were talking about what we wanted to recommend for our committee recommendations.
Yeah, you ask any of our other emergency service departments in Watertown how much of an asset it is to the city of Watertown to have them here.
Guys, this is one of those situations where I don't know if there is a right answer. I would propose in something like this, we find a split the difference kind of thing, so we can not hurt one, help. I would, and I did make comments, and I still stand by those comments I've said, where this is a slippery slope. there are organizations out there that aren't on this list that are quite deserving of consideration. So I would recommend we split the difference or just find a compromise on this one.
Mayor, let me ask you a question. Is this a principal issue from your standpoint, or is it a monetary issue?
Well, this was only a monetary issue as I was looking at. I thought, when I'm looking at it and look at the resource center, I know that our police station takes people there almost daily. If you knew what they did for, and I'm sure Glenn, you know what they do for people that are there, it's just an amazing organization. And I looked at the dive rescue has been going for years and years and years, and it just looked like something that would be acceptable, in my opinion. Is all it was.
So, just since we don't have Justin here, I guess here's my thing is just for the sake of time, there is a motion and there is a second on the floor to restore the dive rescue from 15,000 to 18,000. So unless Glenn wants to make a substitute motion to that Beth wants to, then I would just suggest that we would vote on that motion, and if it passes, it passes. If it fails, then you can continue discussing, but, if everybody's kind of weighed in on it, there is a motion and a second on the floor.
I would prefer that we vote on it, Chairman.
Okay, any more discussion?
Yes, I do want to say one thing. I think, I've done this before, what you folks did, and I think that the whole idea was to, in my opinion, procedurally, I think we should come back to the council before the budget meeting, especially at 9:30 on the second night, so that everybody understands what these organizations are about. Take the recommendations from the three folks that are on the panel that interview these folks, and make a decision in a separate meeting as to which ones we want to fund and how we want to fund them. And we did have a discussion a couple of years ago about taxpayer money and, the authority that we have to make a decision on who gets what for these people that we're donating money to. And I think the feeling at that time was that if it was something that would supplement things that we already do, that would help us, like, these guys would probably, the fire department might have to do some of these things, but things that would supplement things that we already do, which a lot of them do, that would sort of make it okay to fund that organization. But I do think in the future, we need to look at procedure and how we do this. And I'm going to say I agree with Don on splitting the difference. That's my opinion.
Any other discussion? I think I'm just going to go a regular vote on it. We'll see. We'll kind of listen to what it is. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry, I'm with Don on that.
Okay. Yep. So there's two opposed. Motion carried. All right. And there was never any intent to have hard feelings on this. Never at all.
Mayor, I did not intend that at all. I supported your increase for the, that's again, like we always say, they're all worthwhile, but I think Bruce's point was good, is that if we had to do this ourselves, could we do it for this price? And obviously, Resource Center, all those things, we couldn't. So I'm not opposed to what you did here. I was just going back to kind of what we looked at for return on investment. And for Bruce, to answer his question, I think it would have been beneficial if everybody on the council could have seen these 3 pages, too.
And maybe we will do that next year.
That gives a better understanding.
Yeah.
Of what.
Yeah, we will do that next year, and I do feel as though, guys, we can't make promises to people. We have to tell them that there is a chance it could go down. There's a chance something could be eliminated. So they have to be aware of that when it comes time for budget process, because you are talking $200,000 here of city dollars that we're giving away to these groups, and I just want you to be aware. So next year, we will change that so they will come in front of the entire council.
Is it the entire council, or is it just the board?
The recommendations to the full council. with some information prior
I
to,
think,
perhaps a,
no, I think what I'm gonna do.
maybe a work
I-
session.
I think what we will do is a work session. They'll come in front of the work session and they will tell us why they are asking for what they're asking. It won't be 2 or 3 or 4. Well, we can move it through faster than that. It doesn't, well, we'll get it worked out. It'll work out and, okay. All right, is there any old business that we need to discuss? Is there any new business we need to discuss? Any liaison member reports? Any need to go into executive session? I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Bruce, second by Randy. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.